A quick note, dear listeners, we recorded this in a couple installments, so when we did The Lord and the Land, we were perfectly healthy, and then Tom caught a thing that...
Gosh.
You took so many COVID tests.
I can't believe it's not COVID.
Spray!
There's spray in my nose. I'm trying to breathe.
I caught it, but not quite as bad. So,
golly, listen to me.
Yeah, you're gonna notice halfway through the episode, Tom is suddenly doing his Aslan voice.
Made recording that part easier.
It did, yes. So, just FYI, that's what's going on here. The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 20. San Francisco. I can truthfully say that among all the domains I have visited, San Francisco is unique. Magic is omnipresent, but not in the form of robed wizards or eldritch invocations. Instead, magic items are a part of life, and most artisans and laborers have learned a cantrip or two to assist them in their work. I confess that my jaw dropped when I emerged on a city street and saw that the lamps illuminated it not with flame, but with what appeared to be tiny, imprisoned fire elementals. If the people of San Francisco used these wonders for the betterment of the world, I cannot imagine the advances we would see in medicine, magical protection, agriculture. The list is endless. Unfortunately, while they do put some efforts into these areas, the majority of their attention goes to personal pursuits, particularly those involving vengeance. Even as their city trembles in the grip of one magical disaster after another, the artificers of San Francisco cannot look past their own grudges and grievances to save it.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft domains of dread, because if this takes off, we could be immortals. Immortals.
Along the way, we'll look at the Darklord, the domain itself, and some plot hooks and adaptation ideas to integrate this setting into your own campaign.
Today's episode, Big Hero 6.
Woohoo!
Yeah, episode 20. My goodness,
wow.
Who thought we'd hit this milestone? And
because of you guys, you're awesome.
Yes, indeed. Support the Patreon.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking with us on this ride. And
And here's 20 more to come. Cheers.
Mm-hmm. Cheers. Now, we are, in this episode, going to be referring to the domain by its proper name, San Francisco. But San Francisco is a name that Disney will be able to come after us for.
Yeah.
So if you look for this on DM's Guild, it will be a name I am really proud of.
This was so good. This was what let's do this episode.
San Francisco.
San Francisco. The completely similar to, but legally distinct from San Francisco.
So if you look up San Francisco and it's not there, look for San Francisco. You'll find it.
So Big Hero 6 is one that we want to do for a while because there's a lot of Darklord potential with the sort of the villain, the Yokai / Robert Callaghan. Spoiler alert for a movie from 2016.
Yeah.
There's great Darklord potential, and it is letting us do a kind of interesting kind of magitech, more like steampunk, more like maybe Eberron adjacent type game than a lot of their classic fantasy fairy tale settings.
I need to read the Eberron book, don't I? We've done multiple Eberron inspired campaigns.
It turned out to have a lot of useful stuff for our purposes. And it also lets us do a superhero story, and that's interesting. That's something we've not been able to do before in any of our Disney movies we've covered. I don't know if we're going to do it again, but the Big Hero 6, and this is one of the things that kind of really made it pop when it came out, was that it is a superhero story, and a kind of Disney take on a superhero story. And that's a really fun setting to play with. This isn't just like a high-tech sci-fi setting, because we got a couple others of those, but this is a superhero world, a world of superheroes and supervillains, and that's how we want our stories for this domain to feel.
Before, we were all sick of superheroes and supervillains.
Yes. Before we get into sort of why we like this character as a Darklord, let's talk about our Darklord and kind of the number one thing that sort of inspired us to figure out how to do the other elements of the setting, including the name. Thank you very much, sweetie.
You're welcome, darling.
Let's talk about our Darklord, who is called Yokai / Robert Callaghan, in a section we like to call
The Lord. The Lord. It seems that once, San Francisco was a shining metropolis with fantastic innovations in magic and technology that led to a happy, healthy, and prosperous population. One of these innovations, a Project Silent Sparrow backed by a powerful merchant named Alistair Cray, would have created a system of transportation gates for instantaneous travel. Tragically, the spell collapsed while the test pilot, Abigail Callaghan, was still inside. If the name Callaghan sounds familiar to my patron, it is because Abigail's father, Robert Callaghan, was at one point the foremost conjurer of our age, creating, among other spells, Callaghan's reticulated spine. After his daughter's death, Callaghan swore vengeance on Cray, believing the other man had knowingly risked his daughter's life with slipshod spell work. After multiple thefts and acts of vandalism against Cray's mercantile empire, Callaghan ripped open a massive portal to the Far Realms, pulling Cray, his holdings, and countless innocents inside. Given the public nature of Callaghan's revenge, this is relatively common knowledge in San Francisco, as is the fact that a group of adventurers tried and failed to stop him. What is less known, however, is what lay within the portal. When I spoke to one of Callaghan's former students, a young man named Wasabi, he told me that he had been there that day and seen Abigail floating inside the portal, suspended in a magical sleep. This explains why today Callaghan continues to tear open portals to the Far Realms in a desperate search for his daughter, no matter what horrors come through in the process.
If they have seen this movie, and I also hope you've watched the spin-off show, which was really unappreciated.
It's fun.
Quite good.
Yeah.
Then you know who Robert Callaghan is, and you know he's Yokai. And once again, if you didn't, spoiler alert, sorry.
He's got a real cool mask.
Should have watched that movie before you listen to the podcast. But Rachel, they might not know who a Dark Lord is, so what is a Dark Lord?
Well, a Dark Lord is an evil being who commits some kind of act of ultimate darkness that causes the dark powers to say, "Why, hello, new friend, we want to play with you forever." And so they pluck that evil being up, and they put them into a domain, which is a special hell tailor-made just for them. There are some really great Dark Lords. There are some really not so great Dark Lords. So we have kind of our four qualities that really separate the, I'm going to pick on her again, our 2nd edition Xian Shangs from our 5th edition Xian Shangs. And like give us those good meaty Dark Lords that we enjoy. So we're going to go through and describe those four qualities as they apply to the Dark Lord, Strahd von Zarovich, and then talk about how they apply to Robert Callaghan. So the first element of a good Dark Lord is that act of ultimate darkness. They don't just do a bunch of little evil things here and there and kind of like become a Dark Lord through attrition.
Unless they do.
Unless they're Uruk von Karkov.
Unless they're Uruk von Karkov, which is one of the reasons we pick on him so much.
We do, yes.
Like all the others at least have this one. He doesn't even have this one.
Oh, no, not even. Oh my.
Okay.
2nd edition Haslick. His act of ultimate darkness was daydreaming about getting revenge for being hate crimed against.
The Fiend!
So, Strahd's act of ultimate darkness was not daydreaming about getting
it's
revenge
legit,
for being hate. It was that he killed his brother because he wanted to get with his brother's fiancée. Our second element is what they call in Van Ericksen's Guide to Ravenloft the Torment. Since we're a Disney podcast, we call it They Got What They Wanted, They Lost What They Had. In Strahd's case, it's, congratulations, yes, you did kill your brother, he is out of the way, you have eternal youth, so you're not too old for Titania anymore, but you are too Strahd for Titania. You are you, and you will always be you, and she will never want you, Strahd.
Turns out it wasn't the age after all.
Our third element is an element of tragedy or relatability. They aren't just evil for the sake of being evil, and in Strahd's case, man, doesn't that suck.
Yeah. That's rough, buddy.
That's rough, buddy. And then our final element is that the domain reflects the Dark Lord and their curse in some way. Strahd is the Dark Lord of Barovia, which is spooky gothic vampire land. He is not the Dark Lord of Hazlan. And Barovia is this just boring mud slump to reflect that curse of loneliness. He's lonely because he can't be with Titania, and because Barovia is such a boring place, he's not going to be able to find anybody else to move on with, even if he wanted to, which he doesn't.
So sometimes with these movies, we look at the setting and we say, wow, we really want to make this setting work, or some other element. And this is one where it was very much this character.
Yes.
Which is, we love this villain, and we think this villain makes a really fascinating Dark Lord. So we sort of did the backflips / copyright skirting naming / Eberron associating that it takes to like make this work so we could do him, because we say Robert Callaghan has these qualities in a really interesting way. And so the first are Act of Ultimate Darkness, and this is also getting into sort of our version of the story, which is so far we're chugging along like Big Hero 6. The big difference is it's like magic tech instead of, pure tech, but like whatever. And it's the attack on Cray Tower. That's the sort of climax, the Act 3 climax of the movie. We're imagining that kind of going differently, like he doesn't get captured at the end, he doesn't get stopped. He does basically destroy the entire tower, and we can get a bit darker than the movie. Like, a lot of people die.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of innocent people. He does kill Aleister Cray, whose innocence is arguable, but there were a lot of, like, baristas and stuff, and just random Cray-Tech employees that were in that tower who died in this attack. And this is an important distinction, that in the movie, the most sort of important bad thing he does is killing Tadashi, but it's also really clear that that's an accident.
Yeah.
That he didn't intend anyone to get hurt when he started the fire where he stole the microbots.
Yeah. He figured everyone was going to evacuate. He's actually trying to avoid collateral damage. And then we even actually do see kind of the Dark Lord double down and kind of his path toward that act of ultimate darkness, of when Hero confronts him about it, rather than kind of like saying, oh, I do regret that so much. He blames Tadashi for going into him. So we see that kind of trajectory from being the kind of person who, steals technology from a child and commits arson, which is bad, but, doesn't want to murder anyone.
Right.
To justifying murder and then killing them.
We are like seeing his heart hardening to the point where his revenge is so important that he's willing to let many innocent people be killed in this attack, just to sort of have this ultimate revenge against Cray. He could just go into his bedroom and stab it. But he wants to sort of, you took everything from me, I'm going to take everything from you, and then I'm going to kill you. Yeah. Probably in a slightly softer Disney version of that. But that's the thing. It wasn't enough to just kill him, which, would be dark, but maybe not arguably not ultimate darkness. But this is like, no, hundreds of innocent people died. Yeah. Just because you wanted your revenge to be grandiose. And then we have our Torment. Got what they wanted, lost what they had. And once again, that sets up perfectly up for this in the movie, that he does the attack, he defeats Big Hero 6, they fail to stop him. As sort of the building's getting sucked in, he's like saved Aleister Cray for last. He like throws him in to kill him, and he gets the glimpse of his daughter Abigail's ship, and like is able to see like the power's on or something. Like sees the sort of, there's like, they think like a breath fogging when they see it. Like he sees something. He's able to tell that she's alive in there. But right as he does this, the portal closes. We should talk really quickly here about what you had in mind for the, because again, you're the one who knows all of these non-Ravenloft settings. You don't have any Strahds in them, I don't care. So kind of what you were thinking with, what is this, like the portals and the Abigail's ship and the this and the that. So yes, once again, because we're lucky, Dungeons & Dragons, a lot of times magic is just another form of science in the D&D multiverse, and because it lends itself to magic like very easily, we're imagining that this whole Project Silent Sparrow, these teleportation portals, were these kind of planar portals, that they were developing new variations of the teleportation spell. That's the great thing is, yes, teleportation does exist in D&D, but it's like a high-level spell that's very specific, with the idea that they were trying to develop mass transit system of teleportation gates, and that involved maybe going through other planes, or like their initial thing was opening a gate that let you travel through another plane then back to where you left off.
That's a great idea. That couldn't possibly go wrong.
So that's what he sees. He looks into the sort of, she's out there in like the astral sea, some little pocket of the astral sea, or some little drifting eddy of the multiversal foam that makes up the cosmos. And he sees her, but then as he realizes she's there and she's alive, the portal closes. And this is when he's being pulled into Ravenloft, so that curse kicks in. And that curse that's part of this torment is he can't open it again. Like he can't find where she was. He was able, they put the gate together, they were able to open the gate again to where she was initially sent when he attacked Cray Tower, but he can't do it again, and whatever data they needed, like the runes or the inscriptions or the astral charts or whatever he would have needed to recreate the original experiment, was destroyed.
Congratulations.
Because he because he sucked Cray Tower into the vortex. Congratulations, you got what you wanted, and you lost what you had. Because you pursued your revenge to its end, you lost your chance to save her.
Yep.
Good job.
But he's going to keep trying, and we will get to that.
So in our story, the status quo is, that's like his big driving motivation in our story. Because the thing is, like, in the original, his big one is revenge, and that's, like, cool, but that's, like, limiting in terms of story potential.
Yeah, there's really only one story you can tell. There are only so many times that he can, like, plan to kill Cray and it goes wrong. Like, that gets old fast.
Gonna get a little Saturday morning cartoon before 2. I'll get you next time, Cray! No, you won't, with Hero Force protecting me. But no, now it's a much more a broad and lots of potential narrative branches plan, which is he's trying to find where Allison is. He's trying to reopen this gate. So he's opening lots of portals. He's stealing a lot of magical lore. He's stealing magical artifacts. He's doing all these experiments to try and perfect this, like, teleportation magic. These planar shift and teleport spells and stuff he's doing. Which is going to have some fun consequences for the set we're going to talk about. This is another big thing that, like, cracked it with, okay, how do we have him doing something that generates plots for the PCs? Because he wants to murder Aleister Cray isn't enough.
Yeah.
And he's opening lots of portals to interdimensional, cosmic, whatevers.
Lovecraftian nightmares.
That's all the story engine you need.
Yeah.
There's some jerk opening portals. But, to get back to our Elements of the Darklord, then, of course, we have the one that was right there from the beginning. We didn't have to work for this, didn't do anything for this, and that's that element of tragedy and relatability. Yeah. Because, gosh, in the movie, he is this deep, tragic figure. We have deep sympathy with his desire for revenge. Like, we're not like, no, not Cray, he's the best. Like, we've kind of been presented with Cray as kind of a sleazebag. And so, a big part of the movie is paralleling him with Hero. By doing this, even though we don't we only at the very end get that story with him and his daughter, the great thing is, because we've been with Hero through all of his mourning, through all of his tragedy, we're really invested in him, a lot of that transfers over to Callaghan.
Yeah,
if they don't have to kind of show us and make us invested in the relationship, because of the paralleling, it brings over all of our affection and empathy for Hero and for his grief. And so both of them, they're both drowning their grief and loss in revenge, and they're these parallel figures. And honestly, the movie could have played up the tragedy and relatability more, because as you mentioned, he kind of like turns on a dime to full social.
Yeah.
And
which apparently has become a meme.
Yes. But yeah, this is the one we don't have to work for, element of tragedy and relatability. And even we keep that tragedy and relatability with his ultimate motivation being to try and rescue his daughter. I think any PC group is going to be like, oh, I feel bad for I feel a little bad for punching this guy now, stopping him. I'm like, sorry, man, you're going to kill thousands of innocent people, and we can't let that happen. But, like, we really feel for you.
We hope you go to therapy.
We hope you go to therapy. Like, if there's anything we can do to help you find your daughter in a non-opening portals to the abyss kind of way, then, like, we're here for you, buddy. So that this is really going to be a Dark Lord and a villain that's going to tug at the heartstrings, I think. And they're going to be like, we get why he's doing the things he does. And, like, all of his actions make sense, and we believe in them because of that powerful motivation of he's trying to find his daughter. And then finally, we have Domain reflecting the Dark Lord's personality or curse. There's the obvious, like, aesthetic parallel. This is Magitech Artificer Super Science Domain. This is the equivalent of Strahda's Lord of Spooky Vampire Transylvania. That he is the Dark Lord of gleaming towers of robots and science and magic and all supervillains with magic, robot, science. And also with Strahd, as Rachel was saying, there is a deeper thematic connection as well. And this was kind of, I think, the final piece to figure out.
Yeah.
Was it's like, we don't want it to just be aesthetic. We don't just want it to just be, he's a science guy with science, so it's a science land.
It's a science land.
And it's the idea that this is a domain of the cycle of vengeance. And this was rewatching it and bringing in that parallel with Hero and Callaghan. And the idea that, like, it's not just Hero in this version of things. It is this just sort of cosmic gravity that pulls people into these destructive cycles of vengeance, that his personality's also defining the domain as much as his career choice.
Because Callaghan killed hundreds of people. That's a lot of Tadashis making a lot of heroes.
Who are all trying to kill him. Mm-hmm. And we are imagining that in our version of it, there's a couple possibility things we can say. Hero, as we said, they beat Big Hero 6. We want them alive. We want them around for the most part. Definitely want Hero around. We're imagining, Hero's still trying to kill him. Yeah. In fact, that even, might be our big alpha timeline divergent points, is in this timeline, Hero kind of didn't have his realization. Mm-hmm. And he didn't realize how wrong he was to try to kill him and how he was going against Tadashi's memory and going against what he wanted Baymax to be. Mm-hmm. So he possibly even still has the weaponized Baymax, if you want to get real dark. Yeah. And so, we've got obviously the hundreds of people died in the attack. And then we've also got all sorts of portals opening up, unleashing all sort of nasties that could also create more Tadashis, which would create more heroes.
But then, not only do we have all of these heroes going after Callaghan, but we've also got, just like Callaghan had little concern for collateral damage going after Cray, some of these guys are also going to have very little concern for collateral damage going after Callaghan, and they're going to have Tadashis and heroes of their own. So just suddenly everything is just like blood-soaked Borka-esque.
Just destructive.
Who has a grudge against who, is vendittaing against what, and just,
he killed Tadashi, so Hero wants revenge, and then sometime when Hero's coming after him, Hero causes an innocent person's death, and now that innocent person's loved one, possibly little brother, wants revenge on Hero, so they become a supervillain, and maybe they cause someone else's death, and on and on and on and on and on we go. And the nice thing is, this domain lends itself, because it's this kind of super science magic tech domain, it lends itself to people getting their hands on powers. Yeah. There's lots of shady experiments and radioactive explosions that can give people powers. Yeah. And we even have a kind of nice old Ravenloft canon thing with the idea of the Dark Powers checks. Rachel, tell us a little bit about the Dark Powers checks.
The Dark Powers checks were a thing that they did in older Ravenloft, that as you did evil things, then kind of the Dark Powers would start twisting you to gothically reflect what you the evil inside is being reflected by the evil outside, and they would give you some kind of superpower, but also some kind of curse that went along with it. And the more evil deeds you did, the more you would progress until eventually you become a Dark Lord. So there was in the one of the games that we played, Tom's character was doing all kinds of horrible things to protect his family, and so he was starting to turn into a ghost that would eventually be haunting his family's manor and just be trapped there haunting them forever. And so he was getting all these ghost powers, but he didn't progress very far along the path. He would have started losing corporeality and so started going into fugue states and things like that.
Right, and that's cool. In 5th edition, the main place you kind of see this is, most people familiar with a version of this, is I believe the character's Itzhak in Curse of Strahd, and he's really evil and lost an arm, and then one day had a green demon arm that could shoot fireballs, because he was doing all this evil stuff. And I love this. I think this is a really slept upon aspect of Ravenloft, because it lets you make mini bosses. Yeah. Like we're talking about here. If we've got Callaghan as the big boss, this is a origin point for dozens and dozens of mini bosses. And in the universe, people think there's a scientific explanation. Yeah. It's
they think they got bitten by a radioactive spider, but it's really a gift from the Dark Powers.
Exactly, yes. So I wanted revenge. I wanted to be arachnodroid. So I got a radioactive spider robot and had it bite me from the lab I work at. But actually, the sort of metaphysical explanation for why this worked and didn't give you cancer was that the Dark Powers were using this as kind of a cover for transforming you into a spider droid.
To be an agent of darkness and vengeance, so they could watch this cycle of vengeance go on and eat popcorn.
So Dark popcorn. So this is our summation of why we think Callaghan's an amazing Dark Lord. I hope we see that clearly as we do. And especially how you can get a really fascinating domain generating out of both his vibe, his aesthetic, and his inner self. And let's talk about some of the things the Dark Powers have given him, our boss. We have our mini bosses. Here's our big boss. So the basic, I'm giggling because I'm about to say Eberron. The basic stat block, he is stat similar to a Mage Right.
I have no idea what that is.
Remember, Eberron, a Magiteki.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like an Artificer. If you didn't have any access to Eberron, anything beyond Tasha's, I'd say like Artificer. And it's kind of their like base stat block for an Artificer.
Okay, cool.
Eberron. And so that, he also has numerous resources as a spellcaster. He's a very powerful, very experienced, very famous spellcaster. In this universe, there's like Callaghan's Grasping Hand, or like he totally has like a couple of spells named after him.
Oh, he totally does, man.
And
because you see the whole like Hero's heard of him. It's gobsmacked, Yeah,
it's like the whole, magnetic servos. And Hero's like, yeah, you want me to explain how they work? And Josh's like, genius, you invented them.
You want me to tell you about Callaghan's Resilient Sphere?
Yeah, Callaghan's Resilient Sphere. So, whatever you want to do as a spellcaster with his stat block.
Yeah.
Whatever spells you want to give him, whatever scrolls you want to give him, whatever, like, magic items you want to give him can be justified in the setting. In terms of other things, we also... the main power we see is the nanobots, the microbots, and they're so cool.
They're so cool.
And we want to, like, have the combat be very much of that. Like, there's a particular flavor to fighting Callaghan, and we want to give you that. Mm-hmm. I was like, fireball, media stone! But the big thing we're adding is this idea that he has also been studying these portals. So that he's also, like, since the movie ended... he's gotten a lot of conjuration magic. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into a bit more how that works in Ravenloft in the later section. But just that, like, he's got the tentacle stuff. He's got stuff that's like in the microbots. But we've also got incorporating a lot of conjuration magic.
Because if my fellow grognards, if you're going, wait a minute, portals and Ravenloft, I've got...
Yeah,
you know I've got your back. You know I've got your back, fam.
Who do you think you're talking to? So, the mask is the control of the microbots. And this is tricky, like, I didn't want to just make a big spell list.
Yeah.
I wanted to have, like, a nice, small stat block for this. So, what I came up with, and this will be in the write-up.
This is very good.
It lets him cast any warlock spell list, conjuration spell, level 6 or lower. That seems like a lot of words, but it's like that's all you need to cover everything we want to do with him.
Yeah.
It gives you tentacles, you grasping tentacles. It gives you Everard's black tentacles. It gives you Mage Hand to like move stuff around. It gives you Misty Step to sort of be the tentacles, combining with the like basic teleportation stuff he's doing.
For summon stuff, you could basically say that he's having the nanobots like kind of form creatures, or even just like they're kind of just like a blob, but they're functioning in the same way as this creature would. Yeah. It's
got the stat block of like a red cap or whatever, but it's just a little like he's got more autonomy with the microbots. And I have right now it's up to level 6 or lower. Because conjuration spell, level 9, is Wish. So that is another, like, that's his plan B. It's like, I'm going to keep getting more conjuration stuff. I'm going to keep studying it, learning it, leveling up my nanobots, and get to Wish. And that's my backup plan.
That'll go so well in Ravenloft. Well. Wish always goes well in Ravenloft.
It can never go, or indeed anywhere, right?
Or anywhere, but especially when the Lords of the Universe are vindictive.
Are trolls, basically.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a noun to put there that wasn't going to get bleeped. But,
And it's even like, I love that this is why it's his plan B. It's like, he knows enough about magic to know that, like, Wish is a terrible idea. Unless you're wishing for, like, 100,000 gold coins. But, like, to do this is probably going to have a lot of side effects and could go very wrong. So this is plan B. But if he, like, can't get the portal thing to work, he totally will try and do a wish spell. And won't that be fun? Isn't that a fun plot to drop your heroes into?
Oh, boy. And then the last power that Callaghan has is the power that all Darklords have, which is closing, well, except for Prince John and Sword of Shere Khan and Kevin McAllister. And that is closing the borders. And this is one where there wasn't really anything that presented itself within the movie as a way to close the borders. It's not like Sleeping Beauty where we watch Maleficent do it. But the fact that it's San Francisco, like, if you're in San Francisco, you've had straws choking fog, just lock you in on a regular. It's fog. It's mist. It's just You get San Francisco mist. And
you can't get out. Yeah. So the last thing I'd like to do in this section on the Dark Lord is a thing they do in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft write-ups of the Dark Lords. It's what we're doing. It's what we're doing in our free write-up on DM's Guild, written in that style. And that is they like to give their role-playing trait ideal, bond, and flaw. And in Van Richten's Guide, all the Dark Lords is the form of quotes. So we, note the emotion in my voice now, we always try, note that word try, to do these as quotes. But I don't know if you've watched Big Hero 6 recently. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue. He's not in much of the movie. And most of the dialogue he has is before he starts letting his villain flag fly. Yes. And so I'm telling you right now, I'm up-fronting this. This is not going to be our best set of quotes ever. It will hopefully be better than Snow White. Yeah, that was tricky. Though I don't know. She had more dialogue. True. She had more to work with the evil queen. She was in the whole movie. But it was all I want to be the fairest of them all. I'm going to kill Snow White because she's the fairest of them all. So I went to the screenplay. Wow. Did a find on Callaghan. Looked for every instance of Callaghan so I could go find any quote he might have done in the movie. Thank you, honey. And this is the best I could do. This is the best anyone could do, okay? So don't at me. These are not great. Thank you, honey. All right, here's what we got. All right. Wow, that's a short list. Yeah, right? Look at this. Look at this. Okay. I want my daughter back. Bond, perhaps? Yeah, that's got to be the Bond. Mm-hmm. Because it's... I want my daughter back. It's the external thing that matters to him the most. So yeah, go good. He's coming right out and saying it. This will be easy right now. Okay. And God, so many of these are good in context. Mm-hmm. So this is the whole hero is giving him the speech about how revenge doesn't solve anything, and you can see he's like sort of starting to soften, and it's like reaching to him. And then Cray does the yeah, no, let me go. I'll give you anything. And the GM's like, no, we're having a boss fight. I'm not. Yes, you rolled very, very well on which as a gaming lesson, that'd be a great way to yes. I want to talk the villain down and I rolled a natural 20. And you're like, I bought a mini. I spent a whole free afternoon painting this mini. So no, you're not talking the villain down. You're not. So have the NPCs just say something foot in the mouth stupid. I was like, no, please, just let me go. I'll give you anything. Anything? I'll give you whatever you want. I want my daughter back. And the players are like, oh, okay, all right. Roll initiative. That's what we're doing. Ray, you did this. You knew it wasn't ready. Okay. Setback? Was my daughter a setback? This ends now. Man. Yes. Thank you for trying, honey. I appreciate you. Control F, Callaghan. I appreciate you, honey. This is an impossible job. Okay, this is something usable. You're going to watch everything you've built disappear, then it's your turn. Ideal. I said we skipped. Of course. That was his mistake. That's his ideal. Actually, honestly... No, ideal. Could that be an ideal? Maybe for the... Sorry. I'm looking at your last quote here before he goes total heel. Well, if you like things easy, my program isn't for you. We push the boundaries of robotics here. My students go on to shape the future. We push the boundaries of robotics here could be an ideal, maybe? Yeah, I'm actually doing that whole thing. Mm-hmm. We push the boundaries of robotics here. My students go on to shape the future. Mm-hmm. And even an idea of the... shaping the future and changing the world. And I'll take it. No takes you back. Ideal. Okay. And in that case, I think I'm gonna make everything disappear. Then it's your turn. That could be the trait. Just the drivenness, the vengeance. That's a good villain line too. That's a good villain line. And that's gonna be how they interact with them. Yeah, we're always like, what is a quote that's going to guide the DM in role-playing this character, and I think that's a good one. How do I role-play Callaghan in this exchange with my PCs? And it's a good one. And I actually, For our meme flaw.
Yeah, I think that is...
That was his mistake.
I think in the write-up, we're going to have to do context. We're going to basically have to have Hero's line. Turn that into Callaghan's line. Like, Tadashi went in to save me. That was his mistake.
I think you're absolutely right. But even the idea that his flaw is the disregard for collateral damage.
Yeah.
And it's that whole... We can deeply sympathize with what he's doing, and we can maybe even want him to succeed in his goal, but we... said, like, no, it's not okay. You're a villain because you don't care about the people you're hurting along the way. Mm-hmm. Wow, that went better than I thought it would.
That was fast.
We didn't have a lot of options.
It helps when basically you have exactly the right number of lines for the thing.
And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quotes, 4 things we need to fill in. It is just slider puzzling, as you said.
This ends now.
And one of them was, this ends now!
Thank you, honey. Thank you.
You are welcome. So.
We thank you for your service.
This ends now. This section ends now. We have done our best at Callaghan, although a very small amount of dialogue, although a man of few words. He is a man of great potential as a villain in this setting, and I think a sort of keystone, like Strahd is this kind of keystone that Barovia is built around. Callaghan makes a great keystone for a really cool setting, a really unique setting for your PCs to be in, and we'll talk about that setting, the similar to but legally distinct from San Francisco, in a section we like to call
The Land. The Land. As mentioned, Callaghan's actions killed countless innocents, and many of their grieving survivors have reacted with all the grace, mercy, and moderation that Callaghan displayed after his own loss. While San Francisco's astonishing technology is still put to good use in some quarters, far too much of it is dedicated to the pursuit of vengeance. A foiled thief who used druid-like spells to send an army of cobras after her nemesis, an old woman and her grandson who invented bizarre wheeled boots of speed to gain advantage over a rival, a petulant former actor who merged himself with some grotesque sentient fungus for no other reason than to destroy those who upstaged him? The list is endless. Of course, many of these vigilantes create collateral damage of their own in their quest for retribution, spawning a cycle of vendettas that would make a Borkin proud. The city watch is stretched so thin by this constant supply of arson, theft, and murder that they have no resources to spare in tracking down Callaghan, whose relentless quest for his daughter is tearing San Francisco apart at the seams. Hideous aberrations prowl in darkened corners of the city, and some entire neighborhoods have been condemned and quarantined because of Callaghan's activities. I made a brief excursion into one of these areas, remembering how put out my patron becomes when I let my nerves hinder my abilities to thoroughly research the situation at hand. I assumed that I would have enough warning to extricate myself before the effects became truly dire, but within moments I had fallen to my hands and knees, vomiting, my vision pulsing with a color that my mind could not name, and my ears ringing with a sound that was not a sound. I tried to crawl back to safety, but was convinced that all of my movements were somehow leading me to burrow in the street, which now throbbed warm and wet as a mouth. When the color cleared from my vision, I was lying safely outside of the condemned area. I'm baffled as to how I got there. Perhaps an effect of the magical energy? I could have sworn that I glimpsed the tail of a black cat vanishing into an alley, but I was too weak to follow.
So, the land, San Francisco, as a whole, it is this city. It is this very big, bustling metropolis. It is full of technology. It is full of magic, not just magic like wizards in their towers and their grimoires. This is, bring Eberron. This is where magic has become industrialized. Mm-hmm. There are streetcars, there are airships, there are power plants, there are people the average person interacts with dozens of magical devices. Even just your average, baker with his tray like always has like an oven with some magical tweaks to a fire elemental or something, or some fire spells. And the bakery isn't lit by candles or lanterns, but by something with like perpetual flame cylinders or something.
For all our Mage the Ascension players, this was the Son of Ether movie, and it is the Son of Ether domain.
Yes, it was. And so this is also a setting that's a superhero story. So this is not just that you have the sort of industrialized, mass-produced, incorporated into daily life magitech, magical artifacts and items. You have a setting, a city full of powerful individuals. Powerful, unique, colorful individuals. Some who we categorize as heroes, some who we categorize as villains. And the wonderful thing is, PCs fit into that, because you could kind of say this is a world of PCs.
Yes.
That you have some people can cast Fireball and most people can't.
And one of the notes we have here is that, like, there's all kinds of magic. It doesn't necessarily have to be that everyone here is an artificer,
yes.
though. That, that's kind of the way that things are being flavored, but you could have the stats of a sorcerer, you have all the sorcerer spells and everything like that, but it's kind of being channeled through this sort of like scientific thing. Like,
right.
Again, kind of going back to that Mage of the Ascension thing, with Mage is very much the power of belief. And if you believed that you needed this science stuff, even though the magic was really coming from inside of you, and that's kind of what a sorcerer in San Francisco is like. They think that they've got, this PKE meter or whatever, but it's actually that they're casting, detect ethereal resonance and using that as a focus.
Right. You could really easily run any kind of sorcerer. That could be your classic Peter Parker, they have this inherent power, but has this kind of pseudoscientific explanation.
Peter Parker's totally a monk.
Yeah. That they were bitten by a radioactive firebolt, and now they can cast firebolt, or maybe even this would be a good one for something like kind of like biotech, like a bioengineer. So they do have this inherent, like almost psychic or psionic power, and it's just you're running a sorcerer. Or druid would be a great one for just you're really into biotech. Like you built a druid, but your flavor for all your spells is I have all these like biotech things I can do. So I've got these little vials I can sprinkle on plants to make them spike growth. Or I've got the sort of Beast Boy. A weird bug bit me, and they needed to do some weird retro animal virus to cure me, and now I can turn into any kind of animal. And so you're just running a druid, but you've got this pseudoscientific gobbledygook to explain why they can turn into a bear.
Yeah.
Also, the nice thing is tech is kind of in the D&D rules flavor. It can be that the various pieces of tech count as their arcane focus. So the whole, you don't need the verbal, somatic, whatever components to do your, various spells, as long as you've got your, power gauntlets. But once again, if someone takes away your power gauntlets, you don't get to do your magic.
Right.
Which is, once again, very classic superhero, supervillain thing.
Yeah.
So there's a big city. There's any number of places you could put your own locations in. We do have a couple from the movie, and digging into a little bit the animated series, as we mentioned, is really good. You should watch. If you like Big Hero 6, really do track down the show.
Yes.
It's a really good, spin-off of the movie.
Yeah.
And the first of those is Esfit, which might have a different name in the write-up. I haven't decided yet if that's being a little too risky, flying a little too close to the sun. And that is going to be our prestigious artificer school. That this is a school of artificer magic that is one of the best in the multiverse, one of the best in Ravenloft, and people interested in studying artificer stuff from all over the multiverse come to Esfit to study with amazing professors like Professor Callaghan.
Or they used to come to Esfit until it got locked away behind the mists, and now it's not the multiverse, it's just Ravenloft.
But, you could do a lot of fun stuff with this if you wanted to have a wider Ravenloft campaign, if you wanted to have, exchange students from Darkon or Aslan. And
you could have, an Esfit Strixhaven crossover.
Yeah, you could, yeah. And much like how Strixhaven, the Magic School, gave you an entire book, an entire campaign, you could have an entire campaign based around Esfit. You could have an entire sort of CW show of being magic superhero college students in Magic Superhero College. Immortals. So numerous potential plot hooks there, numerous potential resources, any number of vats of acid for people to fall into. or experimental weapons or prototype technology for angry people to steal and give them powers.
That just might function as a metaphor for the kinds of problems that high schoolers face on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, I hope so. So yeah, this is a great setting. As I said, you could easily do a whole campaign just your SFIT students, and you're also superheroes.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of SFIT supervillains too. And a lot of soap opera happens. Yes. And that's pretty sweet, actually.
Smallville game set in Raven. I'm in.
Tell us about another place that's apparently within walking distance of SFIT.
Yes, it's the Lucky Cat Cafe, which is Aunt Cass's place, if that name is not ringing any bells. So, for one thing, it's never a bad thing to have a tavern.
Yes,
just kind of she's letting Tadashi's room out and everything. Your PCs can stay there. It can be a good base of operations. And it's a way that you could meet Hero also because, he's still there, assuming we still want to have Hero around. You might have the other Big Hero 6 around, but there are a couple of different things. We're going to get into it later. There are a couple of options you have for how you want the team to kind of have reacted in the wake of Callaghan completely poning them.
The problem with Big Hero 6, like you definitely, I get you might want to have them. They're great. They're great characters. Everything I want to do the setting. These are the iconic characters. I want my PCs to interact with them. But it's the problem of they are the PCs.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about some possible ways.
We're not going to default kill them this time, guys.
Yes.
They're not going to be Bell.
We're not belling them. Or Anna-ing them.
So the thing that we're kind of going for as the default is that they've become estranged. They know that kind of the reason that all of this happened was because Hero sort of went too dark and turned on them. They weren't being able to keep things together as a team. And they said, you know what? This whole superhero thing was his idea. It was just his little pet vengeance project. What were we even doing? Oh no. The Big Hero 6 is broken up. And that way, kind of, jumping ahead to campaign idea possibilities in San Francisco, you have the one-shot option of you stop whatever the monster of the week is, get Big Hero 6 back together, and then you're able to leave and go on and your crazy domain-hopping adventures, knowing that they're there to hold down the fort. You've inspired them to keep things going.
To quote another Disney animated show with a lot of super science in it, dude, we're getting the band back together. More songs, though, more musical numbers.
They're fabulous.
They're fabulous.
You can, if once again, we're not having our default be that we're killing Big Hero 6. If you want to have had some of them die in the fight with Callaghan, just if there are any that you don't know what to do with, Fred is pretty tonally weird.
Yeah.
If you want to run this, very serious horror game in this setting, you might want to kill off Fred.
Yeah.
Or even just, if you want to just kind of show, this is another reason that they broke up, is, oh my gosh, Hero, your vendetta got go killed. Whatever. Please don't kill Honey Lemon. She has a giant sign over her head that says, "Fridge me." Don't read the sign. Please. I'm begging you.
She's so sweet.
She is too good for this sinful
favorite.
earth. And she is exactly the kind of person who will die and shatter their innocence and idealism. Don't do that to her. I love Honey Lemon.
Don't be obvious.
Don't be obvious. You can even kill off Hero if you want to. I wouldn't, because I think there's a lot of potential there for, the parallelism and everything. But if you just kind of want to do this setting with Yokai running around opening his crazy Yokai portals and not have to worry about the baggage of any of these superheroes, you can kill Hero off too. I'd say the only one that's really essential is Baymax, because if you're in San Francisco, you want to have Baymax.
You gotta have Baymax.
Yeah.
Another thing in the city itself that I think is going to be useful for any possible campaign, any possible meta plot you decide to do with the whatever status of Big Hero 6, and that is Good Luck Alley. And I don't think it's named in the movie, but it's the place where Hero goes to the bot fights at the beginning.
I am so excited by all the possibilities in Good Luck Alley. It's just,
and then in the show they mention it's called Good Luck Alley because good luck getting out of there with all your money and limbs intact. So this is the bad part of town, and oh man, where would D&D settings be without the bad, shady part of town? So you've got where a lot of crime happens. That's where you get any underworld stuff. That's where it's your rogues' time to shine, or anyone with a criminal background. Those thieves can't. That's where they use thieves can't, is Good Luck Alley. We've got this one figure we can build on, the guy from the beginning, Yama, who you get the sense is kind of a crime bossy type character. And once again in the show, he's a regular C-string villain of he's just doing crime stuff. But that gives you, in the movie itself, we have this sense of there being an underworld. And there's so much superhero plot potential, story potential with the idea of an underworld. Yeah. I mean, what superhero setting doesn't have a criminal underworld that plays into the setting sometimes? Yeah. So it could be that this is a place where you can hire mercenaries that have super stuff for vengeance. So, like, your older brother got killed in a fire started by some supervillain, and you want revenge, but you're like, yeah, I'm not going to put radioactive spider blood in me. But I have money, the real power in this world, money.
Buckets of it,
so I can hire some, weirdo cyborgs that can shoot lasers and climb on walls and do all this stuff, and they'll go find that person and kill them.
Yeah.
And that's even a nice, you beat the first wave, but there are, more thugs coming with weird cybernetic or biotech powers.
Which opens up this whole new plot hooks and all of these revenge theme things, because it's the whole, you could have the person who wants to get vengeance against this gang that did whatever horrible thing, or realizes that the gang was hired by somebody who wants to take it all the way up to the top. There's so much potential here.
And you could have a kind of a dark story where actually Hero, he has that connection with the bot fighting. Maybe he's selling a lot of this, he's selling people exosuits that shoot lasers and let them fly, because he's kind of refining and tweaking his own violence tech, his own vengeance tech. So this is a good way to fund, carbon fiber underpants don't buy themselves. So this is how he's funding his whole superhero vengeance, 90s kind of 90s comic book character lab is selling weapons and exosuits and stuff to this underworld. And also we have bot fighting as our big in terms of the underworld. And so you have bot fighting, that could be cool, but the great thing is that opens up this idea of this is an underworld where there are gambling and gladiatorial competitions.
Yeah.
Oh man, don't PCs love underground gambling gladiatorial competitions. And in the show, once again, there was a whole storyline where there was this underground high stakes cooking competition. And the whole ant cast was sneaking out. She was the champion.
That's amazing.
She was called the White Cat, and she was the queen of this underground cooking competition. And they introduced this really cool thief assassin character who was a sushi chef with laser knives. And your PCs are going to have so much fun with a high-stakes, cutthroat underground cooking competition ring. And then they later, in Season 2, introduced, mecha suit lucha wrestling.
And then another setting we have, kind of getting back into the, possible settings for however many big heroes we have at this point. Yes. Big Hero 4, Big Hero 3. We're not at 6, because Hero's definitely not there.
Yeah.
And he's taking Baymax with him, so 4 tops. But a possible place, if you want to have some of those heroes still be around, is Fredrickson Mansion. And that could be, if you still do want to have, they're not totally broken and disillusioned, the remaining members of Big Hero 4, or just a couple of the remaining members of Big Hero 4.
Maybe they're Big Hero 3.
They can be based out of Fredrickson Mansion, and they can be at they can be kind of your Van Richtens. They're they're hiring you, they're, sending you out to do things. It could be they didn't die, but they were horribly injured, and so they can't go out in superhero anymore. But they're trying to get you to, they'll let you go out in superhero.
Or even there's so much of it going on that they need help anyway. There used to be 6 of us. Now there's 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you ever have you're doing a superhero character and you're in Marvel Comics, New York City. You don't have to be why isn't Spider-Man doing this? I'm sure he's busy. I'm sure Spider-Man is busy right now. So no, you, new character, need to be the one that stops this guy. And Fred could make a great, kind of like you said, Van Richten character / guy in the chair. And you could, if you wanted your guys to be the main heroes, then you could have some of the Big Hero 6 people as your kind of support team.
You could also always have, they could kind of start out kind of showing you the ropes and being your guy in the chair and everything. And then if it starts getting to the point where there's fear of them taking over the story, then suddenly they get swallowed up by a portal and the PCs have to rescue them. But they're not going to be able to until the end of the campaign. Oh no!
And speaking of this being swallowed up by a portal, one final place we're going to talk about, and this is Akuma Island. So this is that island they go to where the experiment, the Project Silent Sparrow experiment happened.
Did they get akumatized?
Yes, they did. The darkness in his heart.
Hero basically got akumatized.
He did, yes. And they get there, and there's like a quarantine sign. And nothing really comes of it other than, like, and they watch the video flashback. The general's like, quarantine this whole area because a portal was here. But we can do a lot with this island is quarantined. And the idea that, like, yeah, the portals are still opening. Mm-hmm. The reason it's quarantined is because the experiment never, like, shut down correctly, or else Callaghan reopened it when he was rebuilding the portal. But this is just an island, a giant abandoned lab full of nasty, like, far realm aberration critters. Mm-hmm. And this is what is it? It's a dungeon crawl! Just, man, remember they're going through the, like, ruined, abandoned base, and it's really kind of spooky, and imagine that, but, like, also there are, like, weird aberrations there. Also, there's, like, Grell and stuff there.
Weird aberrations and, like, horrible constructs that they built that are left behind and still, like, looping some of the former orders they had, and there's such delicious dungeons.
Yeah, it's such a good... This is another one of those, like, infinite plot generators. And it could be maybe Callaghan's hiring people or forcing people to go there to, like, search for more data, try and search for information about the experiments, to try and get the coordinates for this portal.
Because they were in Cray Tower, but what if he had other copies on Akuma Island?
What if he could, like, if he got all the files from Akuma Island, he could reconstruct it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to go himself because it's full of, like, Grell and hideous gibbering mouthers and gelatinous cubes and, like, all sorts of weird mutant stuff. Or maybe he's forcing people to go. This could be like Callaghan's holding someone hostage, or Callaghan just somehow says, like, okay, I won't do this thing you don't want me to do if you agree to go find me this logbook or these records or this, like, whatever on Akuma Island. Mm-hmm. Either way, this is your classic capital D, capital C dungeon crawl, but it's going to be really spooky and atmospheric.
Yes.
And it's awesome. So we've got everything you need for a good superhero setting. We have got a lot of super villains. We've got portals spilling out monsters. We've got an underworld with lots of access to cybernetic hands or mutant hormone implants that let you shapeshift into animals, or laser sushi knives to make laser sushi.
I want to make laser sushi.
And we've got this great core driving story engine of this is the domain of the cycle of vengeance. But, Rachel, what do you do with it?
You make laser sushi.
You make laser sushi.
Dread possibilities. Thankfully, the effects of the condemned area were short-lived, leaving me fit enough to finish my survey of San Francisco, and even to travel to the outskirts of its most dangerous region, Akuma Island, home of the ill-fated Project Silent Sparrow. The island is held under the strictest possible quarantine. Rumor has it that new portals are constantly opening there, bringing in nightmarish eldritch abominations and sanity-twisting shifts to the landscape. The lure of the magical artifacts and research connected to Project Silent Sparrow are too much for some to resist, but few have ever returned from Akuma Island, and fewer still come back unchanged. I hired a boat to take me to the waters surrounding the island, then cast Fly to draw as close as I dared. Parts of the landscape seemed to flicker and shift, as though the trees were candle flames. I saw movement between them that seemed wrong, fluid at one moment and jerky at the next. On one beach, a screaming man appeared in the surf, ran halfway toward the forest, and vanished, only to reappear in the water again. He repeated the loop over and over with no variation, completely unaware of my presence no matter what I did to get his attention. As I circled the island, I heard a slithering, chittering sound behind me, like a snake moving over gravel. I turned to see a man in a red and white mask gliding toward me on what looked for all the world like a platform of tiny metal insects. Before I could react, a massive tentacle shot out from the platform, wrapping around me and holding me fast. In a rough voice, the man told me that if I was so interested in Akuma Island, I should explore it for him. If I brought him something useful from the laboratory, he would even let me leave alive. Constrained as I was, unable either to reach my belongings or to make the precise hand motions required by magic, I had few options at my disposal beyond vicious mockery. I began lambasting the man for his cowardice, demanding to know what sort of contemptible dog sent an innocent young woman to face unknown extraplanar horrors while he watched safe and comfortable from afar. The insult hit harder than I expected. I actually saw a trickle of blood fall from his mask. There are, however, unfortunate side effects when vicious mockery works too well. The man's posture went stiff and cold, and then the tentacle began to tighten. As the breath was crushed from my lungs, my vision flooded with that strange non-color, and my ears rang with the sound that was not a sound. Suddenly, I was back in the boat, which I immediately ordered to return to the mainland.
I want adventure in the great ride somewhere.
I want it more than I can tell.
So why did you come to San Francisco, which is similar to but legalistic from San Francisco?
Let's see. I don't think we actually have a trade caravan in this one.
What? Yeah, yes, we do. No, we must. We must somewhere. Let me check again. Apologies, listeners.
Yes, there aren't very many trade caravans in San Francisco. Like that's not a thing. Although
there is the trade, and it is a
trade.
Port. We do see, like in the opening establishing shot, we see the port, and then we also have the scene on the docks. Mm-hmm. So much like what we did with Crescent City with Princess and the Frog, it's very easy to say, like, oh, this is a major port.
Yeah, and we don't have the escorting a trade caravan as a thing, but we do have that. They might be coming here for some of the trade goods that San Francisco has to offer, specifically tech, magic, and magic tech. So if they want to get any kind of artificer goodies, especially if you have an artificer in the party, this is a really good place to come for it. Other than the Morty, there aren't a whole lot of other magic tech places in Ravenloft. So,
and this is also, if you're comfortable, as we've suggested a couple times, just reflavoring a lot of the magic items as tech, like we mentioned a couple times that the item is basically boots of spider climb, but you could have it be like little steampunk tentacles that come out and spider legs that you climb, or in this case, it could be like gravity boots.
Yeah.
It could be just a kind of magical thing that affects gravity, lets you walk on walls. Mm-hmm. And if you're comfortable doing that, reflavoring them as more tech, then this is also a great place to come for magic items.
Yeah.
And they could hear, very easy for your PCs to hear, that there is this place called San Francisco where there's all these like magical items available, magical weapons available, magical armor available. Mm-hmm. And what more do you need to give PCs other than this is the place to go spend all that gold you've been holding on to?
Yeah.
Because there isn't much to buy in the average general store anymore.
Another good hook that we have here is that there are plenty of reasons why people in San Francisco/San Francisco would be wanting to hire mercenaries. They mentioned there is all this like horrible gang war blood feud stuff going on. The PCs might be hired to do some kind of like vengeance thing. So you mentioned the whole that some people are hiring criminals in Good Luck Alley to kind of do stuff for them. Well, what if the criminals in Good Luck Alley did stuff against them in the first place? They don't want to go and do that underworld stuff. They're going to need to go and hire somebody else. Or even if they, they want to get revenge, but they don't want to get involved in, like, criminal stuff. That's a bridge too far. Then bringing in the PCs might be a way to do that. You might even have a thing where the PCs are hired by the authorities.
Right.
Because there is all this escalation, there's all this violence, there's all these supervillain shenanigans happening. The authorities are not ready to deal with this. They've got the Joker and the Riddler running around. They need a Batman.
They need a Batman, exactly. The authorities can deal with bandits, but they can't really deal with bandits with laser crossbows. So they need people that can deal with bandits with laser crossbows.
Yeah. Or they also can't deal with Cthulhu. Speaking of bandits with laser crossbows, one possibility we're very excited about is if you're coming in from another domain, particularly ones that work beautifully for this are Londinium, which was our Great Mouse Detective domain, or if you're doing Old Nova Vasa, which was another, like, criminal mastermind domain. All of this Magitech, your PCs aren't the only ones who are going to want that. And if you're, fighting with Radigan's gang or with Malkin's gang, if you're doing Old Nova Vasa, and suddenly they have, like, these crazy magic guns coming in.
Yeah.
Your PCs are going to need to, like, follow where that's coming from. So you can do kind of like a classic followeth trail of the arms dealer back to its source.
How many superhero stories have had the gangs are getting advanced laser weapons and you have to follow the arms dealer back to its source? It's some mad scientist. That's like 3 episodes of Gargoyles alone. So, yeah, you have an enormous number of options, because not only do you have all the options of a major city, you have all the options of a major city that is very, high-tech for a version of high-tech in this setting. And then even beyond that, you have a major city with a lot of superhero shenanigans happening.
Yes.
So, much like Marvel Comics New York City, there's infinite reasons for a costumed do-gooder with a magic hammer to come to this city. But once you get your costumed do-gooders with magic hammers to come to the city, what are they going to do there? What are the sort of stories here? And we've mentioned, my goodness golly me, you could do many stories here.
Yes.
But if you want a story that plays into the core themes and the core hooks, and the nice thing is here you can bring in Callaghan in some interesting ways. And first, this was the key breakthrough, and it was having it not be the sort of heart of the story with Yokai is figuring out who he is and what he's doing.
Because their PCs already know.
They know, yeah. But the heart of it is this cycle of vengeance. And so that's a very broad theme that you could have a number of potential campaigns run here, could potential adventures run here, that can tie in interesting ways to that theme of cycle of vengeance.
Yeah.
And if you're having a longer story, then I suggest, I've mentioned it a couple of times, the Big Hero 6 series is quite good. Like, if you like Big Hero 6, I really think you'll like this series. It's a very good adaptation.
It's fun. I haven't seen as much of it as Tom has, but what I've seen of it was really a blast.
And it's a great source for us, because they basically are saying, how do we take this singular superhero movie and make it an ongoing episodic story, which is what, like, your average D&D game is going to be. And what they would do is each season, more or less, would have a big bad, a boss villain. And that boss villain would be working on a master plan. And there would be episodes where they would have the individual episodic villain, like, sort of the monster of the week, for a Kohler generational nerd reference kind of show structure, very Buffy. You would have the monster of the week, and they have the problem of the week, or the criminal of the week, or whatever. They would have, there was this I love, they were recurring, like, B-list villains. They were a team called High Voltage, which was a mother-daughter team of dance criminals. They would do dance moves, and their, like, costumes were equipped with gear that would, like, shoot electricity, and they could, like, do it in synchronization.
Sparkle motion?
They were sparkle motion, but
gosh.
Like, in crime, in supervillain form. Named Barb and Juniper. So you have like your villain of the week, you have your dance criminals of the week, and then, like, in the background,
boy, he was my favorite.
He was so good, yeah. Crazy fast food robot. So you have that, they're doing their stuff, and that's the A story. But then in the B story, either they're working for the big bad, or the big bad's using them as a distraction, or even just the big bad's taking advantage of the distraction to, like, work on their plan.
Kids into your music, like people of a younger generation than us. Truly, if you're like, oh, I heard the Buffy's good, I should probably watch. You absolutely should. And it is my Bible for campaign pacing.
Yeah, it's really good. And you could do a similar thing here with Big Hero 6, because once again, you're doing a superhero story, and that is also a classic superhero, cartoon or comic book thing. You have the A plot of Superman fighting Metallo, but then in the background, there's this wider story of Lex Luthor's master plan.
It turns out that it's the light making Superman their butt puppet.
Also, final point about the series that is a great source of potential NPCs and locations. Like, if you really want to spend a lot of time here, if you love this setting and you want to spend like months and months and months and chests and sessions, once again, this series is a great model of that, because it's 3 seasons of these characters having adventures in this setting. And your PCs could be these characters having these adventures in this setting.
Kind of going with some of the stuff that they were doing, kind of what we're talking about with the pacing here, you can create some kind of boss, have them be kind of your overarching villain, who it turns out that all these, villains of the week are working for them or are in some other way connected to them. And it'll still feel coherent with this domain if that big boss has vengeance as their primary motivation. And that way, you don't have to have all the minor villains have vengeance as their primary motivation, because that could get really repetitive really fast.
That would be a little silly.
Yeah, but you as long as the big bad is being primarily motivated by vengeance, then it's still going to be fitting into this theme.
And if you want the biggest of possible big bads, you can have this same story structure. If you kind of want one season, so to speak, and it can be Callaghan.
Yeah.
You can have Callaghan is working on this master plan to open some sort of horrible portal to the great beyond. It even gives you a reason why he hasn't done it yet. If it's like the stars have to be right, or I need to find the 7 crystal daggers to pierce the veil between worlds, and they were hidden by the. Once again, Buffy did this kind of thing all the time. Yeah. Of like the 4 pieces of whatever.
Yeah, I need to go and get the such and such from Akuma Island.
Yeah. And one of the things that is a neat thing in the background of the Disney intellectual property, which is completely different from this.
Yes.
San Francisco. And that's the idea that you had this great earthquake, like the earthquake in San Francisco in 19 whatever, and that's sort of, this was the city that was rebuilt about. That's our divergence point. And in the first season of the show, spoiler alert for a show I'm recommending, they discover that basically the earthquake was actually triggered by someone doing these like science experiments. Person had thought they found a way to create an unlimited energy generator, and we went wrong and triggered the earthquake. And this was sort of this person's like deep dark secret from the past. And the villain of season 1 is basically trying to, I fixed it. I figured out.
Oh, of course
If I can just get all of these original notes and gear, I can recreate the experiment and actually create the... And
This is a great plan. Nothing is wrong with this plan.
And then the great thing is, a lot of your players, if they're American, will have this idea in their mind of there being this great earthquake in San Francisco. It's a pretty well-known historical event. So you could even tie that in with Callaghan. The whole that, like, the earthquake was this, like, weakening of the wall between the worlds. So if you do another earthquake, you can weaken the wall between the worlds again. And of course he's like, well, sorry, collateral damage. Sorry, entire city where thousands and thousands of people are going to die. I don't care about any of that.
Grognarth, if this sounds like the Grand Conjunction, put a pin in that.
So yeah, you have so many possibilities, and the great thing is, I wish all of Disney movies had like a good show.
Yes!
Because if we're suggesting like a one-off story, a movie's fine as a template. But the kind of thing like something like this or Londinium where we're like, oh my gosh, you could run a years-long campaign here. It is so wonderful to have this show to point to and say, like this! And the nice thing is, with either a shorter game or a longer game, you have that Dark Lord plot armor. You can't necessarily bring Callaghan back to the light, but you could stop his plan. You can't defeat him. In fact, we touched on this with Hercules and in Hades, the dark powers will help you to stop his plan. Yeah. Like, the cosmic forces of the universe are aiding your PCs in stopping his plan from working. And you can't bring him back to the light or get him to reform or repent or whatever. But the great thing, if you've got this sort of collateral damage, you've got these NPC, maybe the PCs care about, who someone they love dies in Callaghan's plan, they become a hero, and you can kind of bring them back to the light. You can kind of have a Big Hero 6, the movie style arc, organically coming out of this structure of some kind of big bad master plan.
Even in Big Hero 6, they didn't reform Callaghan. Like, they saved his daughter, but they didn't reform him. He got arrested. So you could basically, be doing something like that, only instead of saving his daughter, you're saving all of these people who are going to be collateral damage. Like, it will still feel like a Big Hero 6 thing.
And the great thing is the torment you stopping him. This is another area where, weirdly enough, the plot armor of the Dark Lord and the plot armor of the superhero genre can gel very well. Because it's like, no, he's going to go to jail and you can all leave and be happy. And in universe, he's gonna escape.
Right.
And he's gonna do it again. Right? Like, that's inevitable. You know, you cannot get Strahd to leave Tatiana alone any more than you can jail the Joker.
Yeah.
Permanently.
But you're giving everybody a little break.
Right. Or even once again.
I love that. I never thought of that analogy before. But yeah, Dark Lords are supervillains.
Yeah, and that's yes, they're always going to come back because they're supervillains, and that is the nature.
You can stop this plan. Right. You can stop the Joker from Smilexing the Thanksgiving Day Parade or whatever. Yeah.
And then if you just put the book down and don't read another Batman for a while, you're like, okay, cool. The day is saved. It's only going to be unsaved if I go back into it and read the next issue. And once again, if you're just doing a domain-hopping world tour, they can stop his evil plan, Callaghan's evil plan. They can get him jailed. They can leave and just be like, well, okay, cool. Like, it's done. The story's over. As long as they don't ever go back to this setting, then they don't have to ever know that he's inevitably going to escape from jail and start building his portal thing again.
Tom is looking at me because I'm making my thinking face. I'm trying now to figure out who the Ravenloft equivalent of Harley Quinn is. Like, who started out, with their villain
side
story.
Piece, yeah.
And, stay tuned, dear
listeners. Stay tuned for updates.
Combining Harley Quinn and Ravenloft, this is a good day for me.
I never thought of this before. But no, yeah, I just made that connection and actually kind of... I think I've made my thoughts clear if you've listened to other episodes about the kind of narrative limitations of the Dark Lord structure. And that is the kind of plot armor it is. You can't ever totally save the day. And it makes it a bit more palatable to me to think of them as recurring supervillains.
I like that.
Just Batman's never going to stop Joker. Superman's never going to stop Lex Luthor. That's not how this universe, this cosmos works. As long as there's a market for more stories about Batman, the Joker's always going to escape from Arkham Asylum. But it's always worth it for him to stop whatever Joker's plan is, or Luthor's plan is, or whatever. So, yeah, you're never going to stop Strahd, but you can stop Strahd. So, after including a long digression on how this actually weirdly overlaps well with a lot of the archetypes and rules of superhero comics.
If you have Batman the Animated Series and Buffy on your Generational bingo card, you were in luck today.
You've been paying attention.
And Gargoyles.
Yeah. We're bingo. I think I just got myself bingo.
I love you so much.
But what if you want to run this for younger kids that love Big Hero 6? Because I can see that, right? Big Hero 6 is a superhero setting, but a very kid-friendly superhero setting.
I mean, the reason that we watch, or you watch the show rather, I didn't see very much, but the reason that you watch the show is you're watching with our kids.
Right, yeah. And superheroes are really, really hot right now, but honestly, a lot of the Marvel stuff, kids a lot younger than is maybe appropriate are watching a lot of the Marvel movies. Whereas this is this is 5 and up, you're basically fine with Big Hero 6 stuff. So we always talk about how to do this for younger players, older players, and sometimes we're like, why would younger people? Well, all the young Hades Town, all those 6-year-old Hades Town fans that are out there. But no, legit, you might have your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, that this is their favorite movie.
Yes.
And the idea of having a game in a version of Big Hero 6, that would what they would pitch, what they would ask for. So, a couple obvious ones. And this is, we've darkened it a bit from the movie. It's basically go back to the movie. Because I just mentioned that is a very good, it's a superhero story with a lot of these themes, but done in a very kid-friendly way. So, don't say kill, right? They never say kill. It's always Baymax, end him. Which you will notice that if you watch a lot of kids' action stuff, they get so many euphemisms for kill or murder.
Finish him off.
Kind of thing. Have the violence be very bloodless. Once again, it gels very well with the superhero conceit to have very bloodless violence. You can still have this cycle of vengeance story, because that's the heart of the original movie, but don't necessarily have the PCs pulled into it.
Yeah.
And don't have them accidentally, kill somebody's father and have a supervillain. That's no. And just don't have hero be a murderer. Yeah, don't have Baymax be a murderer.
Don't get too dark with the actual characters.
Yes, the ones that they love.
Yeah.
You could still have this story, and I think a lot of kids would like this story, even more maybe than some adults, of the team split up. But it can just be because they failed to stop Callaghan.
Yeah.
So the team split up, and you can still do that great getting the band back together story.
And maybe Hero's even all dark and broody, and he's going back to bot fighting, but he's not killing anybody.
Yes. You can have Fred, like have Fred in it. You know, we said you might want to cut Fred for adults or for a more horror-themed tone, but this is, you want to have Fred. Like, Fred is a real keystone character. And you can still have these themes of vengeance in other forms, but once again, it's more like the villains are the ones doing the cycle of vengeance, or your Callaghan's. Or if someone's pulled in the cycle of vengeance who you want to be a heroic NPC, then it's the whole, they're misguided and you stop them before they do anything too wrong. So like Hero.
Or like we've mentioned, Jet from Avatar a million times is the right way to do this with things.
Yes, absolutely.
And the, like, having kind of, especially if he's going against someone like a Callaghan who's killed a lot of people, and he's like, okay, well, I can stop him by killing fewer people, then that's like a Jet figure, and they can be like, no, we have to stop you, and like and they'll feel so deeply sophisticated. Oh my gosh.
They'll love, like, reaching that character and persuading them of the error of their ways.
Our tweens eat up Jet with a spoon. Yeah.
And yeah, this absolutely could have, the heroes should be not 90s gray anti-heroes wreaking collateral damage. This isn't a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah.
But if you want to throw in, especially for older kids, like we mentioned, tweens, a kind of Jet or Punisher-esque figure, as long as it's like, no, their job is to change them. Their job is to, this person is tragic, this person has sympathetic motivation, the PC's job in the story is to reach to them and change them.
Yeah.
Then that you can still do that kind of a type. But what about if you have adults that want things to be all they want is 90s gritty, morally ambiguous anti-hero superheroes with lots of guns?
Well, first off, if you have adults and all they want is superheroes, and chances are they watch Batman the Animated Series, so I'm going to do a brief interjection about how I don't think that I've come across someone who is Harley Quinn in Ravenloft, but I have someone who I want to be Harley Quinn in Ravenloft, who is 3rd edition Eleni of Toyalis. She would work perfectly for it. If you want Rachel's old lore corner later, then I'll go on that tangent. I'm not going to do it right now, but man,
I don't know who that is.
Yes, you do. She has like apprentice.
Oh, that one. Yeah. I didn't know she called Eleni of Toyalis.
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 Yeah, no,
Toyalis.
She's Hazlitt's apprentice. You beat the
tar
tar out.
Right. We sure did.
Anyway, so if you want Rachel's lore corner later, where I talk about why Eleni would be a perfect Harley Quinn, let me know. Hit me up.
Hit us up on Discord. Rachel will make a post.
I will. If you want not Batman the Animated Series 90s superheroes, you want Batman going after serial killers, leaving people in dumpsters 90s superheroes. So, yeah, lots of killing. Say kill all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go out of your way. No need word but kill.
Like, as usual, for the aging up, you're going to be doing the opposite of the aging down. Like, lots of that ambiguity, lots of that moral grayness. Have people who are, like, beloved NPCs, have them cross lines. So, like, have them go places for vengeance that people aren't entirely comfortable with them going. And you can really dial up the horror here. In addition to just, all the thematic stuff with the vengeance, there is so much potential for really awful horror here.
Yes, there is.
So, with all of this cosmic horror stuff with the dimensions, you can have the most horrifying aberrations, you can have reality horror, you can have pieces of, like, non-Euclidean other realities leaking through. Like, there can be a section of San Francisco where you're just doing Annihilation. It's Area X. And, all of that nonsense is happening.
Zone where deers are growing flowers on their antlers and all kinds of stuff.
People are getting merged with bears, and it's bad news. Once again, anything that you want to do from, like, some of the darker superhero comics, go nuts, you can do it.
It's the 90s!
Yeah. There are things that if you do them that I'm not going to speak to you, but you can do any of them.
Pouches everywhere!
If refrigerators show up, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me at all.
This is a domain where they could have refrigerators.
They could have refrigerators, yes.
Put all sorts of things in them.
Also, this mad science stuff, we've touched on this a little bit, but there's so much space for body horror there.
Oh my gosh.
Like, we've been talking about kind of like the gene splicing, the biotech, like getting the biomods and the cybernetics and everything. You can basically be doing Ravenloft Shadowrun. Like,
cool.
Once again, ticking off gargoyles on our generational bingo card. But remember when the pack got their, like, cybernetic upgrades and Hyena was just, like, doing the horrifying things with her limbs?
Yep.
You can just do that and crank it up to 11. Like, there's space for all of that. Also, speaking of Ravenloft Shadowrun, this isn't so much a aging up thing, so much as a Ravenloft Shadowrun thing. But you could have megacores.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there could be, you know, you've got Cray, so there's space for that there. It could be that, you know, Cray-Tech is just one of these, like, mega corporations. Right, yeah. And in that case, you can be playing into, like, kind of those Shadowrun dystopia themes. Like, you know, anything that's aging up in Shadowrun, you can plop into San Francisco for aging up.
And the show... Again, I think I said I was on the show. I lied. The show could be a source from these other companies. Because in the show, you know, they do introduce other companies, other mega corporations. So just for example, in season 2 or 3, they introduced this biotech company called Sycorax. And that would be a great, like, absolutely fits the setting of Big Hero 6 is there's a biotech company, and then that's a great, like, you're getting all these, like, mutations and body horror with a capital B and all this stuff. And so if you want, just once again, you don't want to have to come up with a bunch of evil corporations from scratch, show might be a good place to just get some names, some NPCs, some things like that. And now we have done our typical aging down, we have done our aging up, and now apparently what is developing as a... semi-regular section of this show, a section we like to call Tom's Eberron Minute. Yeah. Tom's Eberron Minute will probably be more than a minute. And I will explain why Eberron makes an excellent source for this place to come from. So our canon setting, this is just somewhere in the multiverse. There was a city called San Francisco, and it got pulled into Ravenloft. But it really fits to have this be a city that was in Eberron, that got pulled into Ravenloft. Or you could take a lot of our plot ideas and just set them in Eberron.
Yeah.
If you don't need that specific Ravenloft domain metaphysic. We kind of do. That's our whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you're running an Eberron game and you're like, I really want to do Big Hero 6, and I want to have Yokai as a recurring villain for my Eberron PCs, you can. So... in Eberron, ready for some proper nouns?
I am.
All right. So you have these things called Dragon Mark houses. And the Dragon Mark houses are a kind of a combination of like a noble house and a corporation. And the idea is that they're a noble house because they're a family that tends to manifest a particular type of magic. And they've done, which I think is a very like realistic world building thing, they've taken that and they've made a commercial empire on that magic.
Yeah.
So you've got this one that's the Mark of Hospitality, and they get a lot of spells about like create food, you know, Heroes Feast. And so they have basically a chain of inns. And their stuff is just the highest quality and cheapest because they have this magical, you know, boost to their productivity that any other inns can't compete with. And also just, it's a standard of cleanliness. It's a standard menu. It's a franchise of inns.
Oh, like, my gosh.
Every mid-size and up village you go to is going to have one of these inns. And it's going to have the same menu.
House McDonald's? House Applebee?
But anyway, so the one that's relevant here, gosh, I have so much up around here, is called House Orien. And their thing is the Mark of Transportation. So they get like Longstrider, spells about speed, spells about access to places. And they started as couriers and became specialists in transportation. They were like teamsters. They would have wagon trains. They'd have trade caravans. So you know we love them. And then they basically developed and ran the Lightning Rail, which is the Eberron version of trains. And so they were really powerful. They were really important. They basically had a stranglehold on infrastructure and trade. And then two things happen, and one is a lot of train stuff got destroyed in this big war. And the second is this other house that's the big weather control house thing used to be sailing. It was, we're the trade on land, they're the trade on sea. But they developed airships. You know what's better than trains? Airships. So House Orien is hugely been diminished in the past, you know, the quote-unquote recent past of this setting. And in canon, and this is what it's all building up to, in canon, the highest level House Orien mages can do teleportation spells. And they offer basically a bespoke teleportation. It's like 500 gold. But the idea is this is a regular service for nobles. And that is like the lifeline of their business currently is this bespoke teleportation. But they're like, hey, teleportation beats airship. It's like rock beating scissors. So they have a big project of magical research called Project the First Step, which is all about standardizing and industrializing teleportation.
That
It's about mass producing.
sounds like exactly what Cray and Callaghan were working on.
It sure does, yes. You could absolutely have the teleportation experiments that were the backstory of this whole thing be part of this House Orien project. Cray, it couldn't be Craytech, it's that he's the local baron of House Orien. He runs the local enclave in San Francisco, and that's what started all this. You could also just set this in Eberron, as we said, not in Ravenloft at all, and have it be, there was this experiment. It went wrong. This guy named Robert Callaghan's daughter died, quote-unquote died. Now he's a masked villain called Yokai in Eberron. So if you want to just set this in Eberron, you're like, I love this idea, I love this story, I want to have Yokai and Cycles of Vengeance, but I'm running an Eberron game. There is a city that makes an excellent alternative to our independently created setting of San Francisco. And that is a city in Eberron called Passage. And Rachel, I said this to her, she said that's very on the nose. And it's because it's like the headquarters of House Orien. So it's where their big compound is, and it's a major port, so check. It's on the shore of basically one of the Great Lakes of Eberron. So Kuma Island could totally be this little island in Lake Galifar that has horrible beasties coming from the outer dark. And it is also really a big city, so that fits the vibe of San Francisco very well. It's like the second or third biggest city in Eberron, because it is like the major port.
Right.
And like rail junction. And it's in the same sort of Eberron country that has like one of the premier magical academies. So it's really easy, and it has the like master house for House Orien, the transportation people, so it's super easy to put in an Eberron version of SFIT. This concludes Tom's Eberron Minute. Now back to the show!
And then, this is where we talk about not just the aging up, aging down, and apparently Eberron AUs.
It fits so well.
It does. But we also bring in other AUs if it's fitting, and one of the possibilities here with the portals, we're not having this as one of our main things in the write-up. You could totally do it if you want to bring in some more of that reality and cosmic horror stuff. If you heard the idea of Area X being in the middle of San Francisco, and you were like, why, hello.
That's all I've wanted out of life.
And that could be that it's not just these weird aberrations coming through, it's also that other realities are leaking in through these portals. In which case you could actually bring in some Spider-Verse stuff.
Nice!
You could
What's
bring
up, Danger?
You could bring in, like, these other realities, like, coming in and glitching and changing. You could have alternate versions of the PCs and NPCs coming in. You can have, basically you can just do Spider-Verse and have Callaghan be Kingpin. He's, like, going into other realities and trying to pull Abigail out from another reality. And he's also pulling in all these other versions of your PCs. In which case, I think the most fun thing to do would be to have each of your players play somebody else's alternate PC.
Yes.
So just imagine how much fun that would be if, like, one of you's playing Bob the Fighter, and then one of the other players plays, well, this is Bob the Wizard. There's the reality where Bob was a wizard and has a completely different personality.
Or you could even bring in, like, other, if you want your sort of alternate universes, it can be, like, other D&D settings.
Yeah.
So it can be, like, you're playing Bob the Fighter from Ravenloft. Someone else is Bob the Fighter from the Forgotten Realms.
Someone's Bob the Solemnic Knight.
The Solemnic Knight from, Kren. Someone's Roberta the Gladiator from Darkside. Someone's Bob Bot 500, the Warforged from Eberron, or the Warforged from Eberron, or the Auto Gnome from Spelljammer. Like, you could even, you don't have to be like, come up with an alternate version of yourself. Like, you have these as a sort of baseline other universe, the equivalent of someone's Bob the teenager who got pulled into a magic roller coaster from the Dungeons and Dragons series. And that's like your version of Spider-Ham.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So that this is, you have things that can be the jumping off points to the alternate versions of your PCs.
Yeah. Oh, that's I want to play Big Hero 6 Spider-Verse.
This, like, can't
into the
be
Baymax-verse.
our default can't, like, ID our default story. It's too weird.
It's too weird, and it's basically an Into the Spider-Verse game, not a Big Hero 6 game.
But it's what we would run.
Yeah.
We would run into the Baymax-verse.
Because I want to be in an Into the Spider-Verse game, and the Kingpin is a Darklord. So,
which is the title of the sidebar. I'm putting it right up about this variant. So, we have given you a quite exhaustive list of potential variants of running a Big Hero 6 inspired campaign. And let's wrap up our discussion of this amazingly fertile potential domain and give you our parting thoughts in a section we like to call
Parting Thoughts.
So the first thing we like to do in this Parting Thoughts section is talk about the genres of horror of this domain. This is from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which we've mentioned in all of our episodes. This is a fantastic section dividing up genres of horror, talking about different domains as manifesting different genres of horror, and then giving you tips on, like, the signifiers and the themes and some, like, monsters that are appropriate for that genre of horror. So this is one where we prepare it mentally in advance, but we don't share it in advance, so you get our live reaction.
This was a tricky one.
There's one that's obvious from our setup. So what did you come up with first?
Yeah, I might know what you're thinking for the obvious one, which would be cosmic horror.
Yes.
But the thing with cosmic horror is it has a bunch of those, like, cosmic horror signifiers of, like, the eldritch beings and everything, but it's not something like Blute Spur or, like, what we did with Hercules, where, like, the cosmic horror whatnots are kind of in control of everything. So I considered cosmic horror, but then kind of shied away from that. I'm actually thinking disaster horror because of the way Callaghan is wrecking everything.
I think that is a really good thought. Continue.
So basically the whole that he's, like, the cosmic horror, it's not like the thematic you're in the hands of a cold and uncaring universe that you get with cosmic horror.
Right.
It's more that there are all these, like, terrible things happening that are tearing apart the city, and that these cosmic things are the reason for it.
They're kind of tearing apart the social fabric.
That it could be, like, a natural disaster as much as a Cthulhu that he's like, and absolutely, like, with some of the AU stuff we were talking about, like, if you wanted it to be Area X, or if you wanted to do, like, horror into the Spider-Verse, that would totally be cosmic, but kind of the baseline we have here, we don't really have the thematic coming in.
It's got a lot of the signifiers, like you said, and it's a story that has the potential, a setup that has the potential to then go into cosmic horror. But the whole idea is it's still the potential for cosmic horror. It hasn't shifted into full. Okay, yeah. I like disaster horror a lot. That's a very good thought.
Yeah, it's like, because we're talking about the whole with the earthquake, and maybe he's trying to trigger the earthquake.
Right, yeah.
And that really with what we have, like, as written here, it could just as easily be he's setting off earthquakes as it is opening these portals to nasty things. Other than Akuma Island, which, you know, is its own kind of, like, private thing.
Yeah, the Akuma Island is like a cosmic horror.
Pure cosmic horror, yeah.
Or once again, if you wanted to do a kind of Area X reality bubble, like a particular district that's got an Area X. So you can fit, like superhero comics, you can fit a lot of genres in this framework. And like superhero comics, you can have issues where Superman fights Cthulhu.
Yeah. This is like last month where, Gail, we're going to have, like, our basic genres of horror, but I think you could fit just about anything in here because the umbrella of superhero comics is so broad. So, like, I didn't have body horror as one of mine, but we talked about body horror a lot.
Because, once again, there's so much potential for body horror, but that's your choice as a storyteller.
Yeah.
Like, what story are you telling? You can take the setting and spin out a body horror, a really bad body horror story, which is kind of what they did in the first half of season 2 or 3. It was a real body horror story, but that's up to you. Like, it's not inherent to the setting.
Yeah.
That's one of the potential outcomes. So, okay. Disaster horror I really like, especially, you have Callaghan, the earthquakes and everything, he's kind of unleashing stuff, but even beyond him, leaning into this sort of gritty, darker 90s superhero stuff. Like, the idea of this is like the superhero battle wasteland.
Yeah.
Kind of Kingdom Come-esque for core generational nerd references.
Or No Man's Land.
No Man's Land for Cold Generation. But this is like, there are stories where they look at the idea of that the outcome of a superhero, supervillain battle is like an apocalypse for the people on the ground, for just the regular citizens of Metropolis. Superman fighting General Zod in the middle of Metropolis for some reason is an apocalypse, basically. And it kind of doesn't matter that which one is the hero and which one's the villain for the people on the street.
It's almost kind of like Cloverfield.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a Cloverfield-esque. Yeah. Even if there's all this sort of fallout of the battle, like the little, like, dudes in Cloverfield that are infecting you or whatever. So, yeah, Disaster. I really like that as our core. Then, as we mentioned, you have numerous options for other stories, for other variants.
Yeah, I had two others that seemed like really strong contenders for a second one, but I'm curious what you had, because Disaster was mine.
Well, I was thinking Cosmic, and I was thinking Body contenders. I've got this idea rattling around that I can't quite put a pin in, and my mind keeps coming back to Gothic.
Interesting.
With Callaghan as kind of a Gothic villain.
Because he is kind of a corruptor, because he's spreading that vengeance?
He's a corruptor, he's spreading that vengeance. And really it's from the past. It's all about the past.
Yeah.
And the past reaching into the present. And he's kind of has these physical... The portals are almost like the physical manifestations.
With the physical corruption?
Yeah.
I love that. Like, sci-fi Gothic horror, you never see that.
Yeah. Because it's not a lot of the traditional aesthetic signifiers, which is so much what Gothic is. There's no mansions or cobwebs.
Right.
Or crumbling, country estates. But yeah, that you have the portals are like he's corrupting the reality, and also they're sort of like the manifestation of his inner sort of darkness and inner chaos, and he's kind of bringing that into the external world. So I just kept...
Wow, yeah, I did not think of Gothic, because my other two that I had were, psychological, obviously, like the Vengeance, they're like, they're Borka vibes.
Sure, yeah.
And also Dark Fantasy, because it is Dark Fantasy with Magic Hack.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I love Gothic, though.
I got too caught up in the signifiers with Dark Fantasy. I didn't think, but no, this is Dark Fantasy, because this is... superhero comics could usually be categorized under sci-fi, but they're really fantasy.
Right.
And this is dark fantasy. So I think for the official write-up, I'm going to put Disaster and Dark Fantasy.
Okay, sounds good. And I'll admit, those are the same genres of horror that were there for Haslan, and I'll admit, like, I was thinking this kind of has Haslan vibes, but with the kind of similar, like, horror flavor, but for completely different reasons, and, like, different, setting elements and whatnot, so.
Yeah. And with the sort of caveat that you can... These are the two that I see as most essential to this setting, just as we've presented. But you could then do anything.
Yeah. Oh, I love. Oh man, I'm so in love with Gothic horror for this. Wow, that's so cool.
Like, I got to put it for the write-up. That's too weird. I had to explain it. Like, well, if you think about it this way, think about this, and if you have these traditional signifiers,
It's like, geez, the only things we're missing, I think, are like folk and slasher, and you can definitely get slasher to work. You can have Yokai as a slasher.
Yeah, no.
We just need to figure out how to make it folk horror, and we've got all of them in this one setting.
Absolutely, yeah. So, the second thing we'd like to do is talk about what kind of game you can run here. There are some settings, some domains, like Curse of Strahd, like Barovia, that give you years of play. Darkon, some of the others... And there are then some that are really made to do one particular story. They're made to do one experience. And like Tempest, speaking of folk art.
Yeah.
That like the Tempest, as envisioned in 5e, like technically there's other stuff you could do, but really this domain exists to do the Midsummer Man. Like, Midsummer is a coming in. Like, that's what this domain is for, is to do that folk horror story. That the one village we get detailed is built around. And this one, I think we have quite tipped our hand. In that we've said this a couple of times, but this is a campaign. It's Marvel Comics New York.
Yeah.
It's the eastern seaboard of the DC comic universe. It's Astro City. It is a superhero universe city.
Yeah. Your PCs can be the superheroes.
And you can have other superheroes, and you could have so many supervillains, and you can generate as many stories as Spider-Man has. Like, even gallivanting around with all the other New York superheroes, there's infinite story engines with Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And your PCs can be Spider-Man and his amazing friends, and you can have your specific villains that you focus on. This is endless potential adventure. So, this is, I don't have a lot more to say here. And then if you are planning more of a one-shot, maybe because it's our playstyle, the domain hopping. So you go to Barovia, you fight Strahd, you save a Tatiana. That's like your couple of sessions. That's the Barovia bus stop on the, like, 5-day tour of Europe kind of thing that you're doing, where you're, like, hitting each major city and seeing the 3 most famous landmarks. And if you want to do that here, then it is the kind of thing we've talked about with his Callaghan. And Callaghan has a big plan, and you maybe fight a couple of bee stringers. You figure out he's got some big plan, possibly city-destroying earthquake to open a portal, and you have a big boss fight. Yeah. And that is like kind of, you do the movie. You do sort of the story of the movie, except maybe you also throw in a couple low-level henchmen, thugs, mercenary, supervillain type people that you can fight in the sessions as you're following the trail of clues to Callaghan's plan.
Yeah. And then if you're doing the longer campaign, you can have like we were talking about have like a mid-boss, kind of a season 1 boss type, who also has some kind of like vengeance-themed thing. And then that's building up to the next boss, which is Callaghan. You have so many options here. Yeah, it's so great.
So, then we like to talk about, speaking of Tempest, speaking of mixing in the 2E3 stuff, if you want to explore more of Tempest, if you were running a game in that kind of old 2E3 unified core, is there a way you could bring, as weird as it seems, you could connect San Francisco Kyoto with pre-existing Ravenloft stuff?
There absolutely is. So, okay, first off, if you were hearing about, like, this opening up portals to other realms, and you're a grognard...
Raising your finger in protest.
Don't, believe me, I was too. It's okay. It's all right. I see you. I validate you. So, in the older material in particular, although there's still some of that with 5e, because they don't want you to be able to just pop out of Ravenloft willy-nilly, there was the idea that planar travel was always one way, that even fiends and whatnot had an extremely difficult time getting out of Ravenloft once they were stuck there. So if you want to have this thing where Callaghan is opening up these portals and bringing in all of these far realms abominations, then you have a couple of options, and one is that it is still that one-way planar travel. He pulls them in, and they can't get out, and they are furious. That was actually a whole thing with, if you wanted to summon fiends in Old Ravenloft, they were going to wear your guts for garters, because they were going to be trapped in this miserable backwater mist slump for the rest of eternity. So that's one option, is that the aberrations are trapped there and can't get home. Another possibility, and this was a thing that the older editions really struggled with, and that actually the Mistfinder, the doing Pathfinder and Ravenloft supplements, cracked it, and it was amazing. This
is what she's bringing to the table. She is bringing in stuff not only from the older editions, but from the fan-created Pathfinder reskin of Ravenloft.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
I believe this was the one that Ryan Naylor did. He's great. So there was a class in Pathfinder that was the Summoner, which is exactly what it sounded like. They would like summon like all the, basically all the Summon Nature's Ally stuff. Yeah. But like times a million. And in the older material, it was very frustrating. I didn't realize how frustrating this was until I, ran a game with a druid in the party. That Summon Nature's Ally and Summon Monster are so nerfed in Ravenloft, because the whole... it's one way. Like, you can't just, summon a succubus or whatever to fight for you, because you summon them and then they're stuck there and then they kill you. So they just kind of get around that by having you not be able to summon them at all. And with the Mistfinder supplement, they got around it by saying this basically, like, you believe that you're summoning this thing, but it's actually a projection created by your own mind. And so that was a way to get around, like, no, you're not just like, okay, you're in Barovia, so you can summon wolves, and you can summon dire wolves, and you can summon bears, and that's pretty much it. That's as high as the power level goes. But you can, if you can imagine a tiger, then you can summon a tiger, because you're summoning the tiger that exists in your mind. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that can be what's going on with Callaghan. And you could get into some really weird, creepy, psychological, like Silent Hill 2 stuff with this. Yeah. where, like, all of these aberrations that he's summoning are reflections of his own psyche.
So good.
Yeah.
And that would be, like, your full Gothic. Like, that would be,
Absolutely.
like, you could, as an intellectual exercise, say this is Gothic. That would make it Gothic. That would make Gothic the correct choice. He's literally summoning manifestations of his psyche, like these monsters that represent his rage and his guilt and his regret, and so good.
That there's this, like, multi-tentacled monster and it screams, and when it screams, his voice sounds like Abigail, and there's one that, like, you know, laughs maniacally and mercilessly as it's attacking you, and its laughter sounds like Cray, and you can see flashes of Cray's face in it. Just
so good.
Yeah. So that's what you can do with those aberrations. The other big thing to bring in here is stuff to do with Callaghan's big plots. You know, once again, if you heard shaking things apart in order to tear things apart and, you know, get his daughter back, and said, by gum, that sounds like the Grand Conjunction, and Aslan wanting to shake Ravenloft apart so that he could get out.
When Rachel said she got a Darkon vibe, that was foreshadowing.
So, if you want to have Callaghan be your big bad, then you can absolutely steal some of the plots that other Ravenloft wizards have had as their big master plans and give them to Callaghan, and it works great. So, like, the Grand Conjunction was this whole thing where Aslan basically wanted to tear Ravenloft down to the roots, and that way, you know, while it was torn apart, he'd be able to escape. And you could have Callaghan doing something like that, and it could be manifesting as earthquakes, which it did with the Grand Conjunction. It, like, when, you know, did the kind of Kryn Cataclysm thing and reshaped the core. That was double D&D nerd bingo. Wow. Or Hazlick's big plot, now they have Slivar as the big, like, town where the wizard school is. It used to be Ramalai, but whatever, the town where the wizard school is. He actually built it in the shape of this giant rune, and Hazlick's whole thing was that he wanted to get revenge on the other red wizards because in his old backstory they hate crimed him for being gay. And so it was like this rune that was going to suck the life from every red wizard in all of creation. Except for Hazlick. And so you could do something like that, where, like, he on Akuma Island, Callaghan is, like, building this enormous rune that's going to do something awful, possibly sucking the life force from a whole bunch of people in San Francisco to power some ritual, so you can be combining Hazlick with the Requiem, with Aslan. I am doing such
big hands.
You cannot
Don't
see
hit
my
me,
hands.
Please. Perilously close to those hands.
You cannot see my hands, listeners, but my hands only get like this when I'm talking about this level of Ravenloft metaplot, and I'm so excited, guys. I'm so excited. You don't even know. So, yeah, if you are into that older material, and you're not planning on using that stuff for those Dark Lords, but you really like the idea of running Big Hero 6, you can give it to Callaghan.
Also, the nice thing is, if you're planning on doing something Ravenloft apocalypse like this, then Callaghan could not only be the big bad of your San Francisco story, but of your, like, Ravenloft story.
Yeah.
It could be the he's sending his minions to steal magic stuff and to do things, and you follow the trail, and, you know, there's all the Vistanis tell you there's these signs of this great, terrible disaster, and you find out that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and then you could have is he working with Aslan? Is Aslan trying to stop him? Like, are their plans going to be, like, running up against each other? Or does Aslan think that he's going to be able to, like, you know, ride this wave of magical energy and do what he wants? Just, you've got so many options here for just your PCs being in this clash of god-level wizards. Trying to save everyone. And then, speaking of god-level, this was Tom, because find yourself a man, too. I love how after all these years, he still whispers sweet nothings to me. So, honey, let's whisper sweet nothings to our listeners.
So, speaking of cosmic level villains, bringing in, speaking of old material, if you like the old Shadow Rift story and the idea, for people that haven't listened to previous episodes, which shame on you, but everybody starts somewhere, you know, we're not gatekeepers, just go listen to them now, all of them. And there is this Ravenloft, basically to make it simple, version of Cthulhu, called Gwydion.
Honey, there are people in the room, please.
And he is trapped in the Shadow Rift, which is this giant hole in the middle of the original Ravenloft continent that basically exists to be his prison. And he has got this strong connection with the Shadow Fae. And in the Shadow Rift story, if I'm remembering correctly, he was manipulating them into opening up his prison. There was like a prince. Gwydion was manipulating him into thinking he was going to accomplish some goal of his by unlocking the prison.
It was the Unseelie Prince. And like the Unseelie Prince and the Seelie Princess, they can't dub themselves the king and queen because the idea was that their father, who's the true king of the Shadow Fae, had sacrificed himself to lock Gwydion in this prison. And Gwydion was just sending dreams to the Unseelie Prince, basically posing as his father, saying, I'm trapped here too. You have to open the portal and get me out. And it'll only be for a second, and I'll be right there at the entrance waiting for you, and I'll run right out before Gwydion can get out, and then it'll
slam the door.
Everything will be fine.
Yeah, and you could do a version of that. That like Gwydion is sending him dreams to open this portal to the Shadow Rift, that's where Abigail is. And you could even get super dark and say, like, Abigail actually is dead, and the image he saw of her was a first sign from Gwydion. And so...
honestly, that's better for Abigail. You're not trapped in some far realm, honey. You're free.
So that's it. That he is being manipulated by Gwydion to open this portal. Because portals... opening portals plus Ravenloft reminded me of this storyline, which, as we have said, Rachel has used multiple times as a big bad for Ravenloft campaigns. I fought Gwydion tentacles at least twice.
Yes, you
Two
have.
separate PCs.
Listeners, we're recording this about 2 weeks out from Valentine's Day.
This is my present. This is my Valentine to you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But yeah, and then you could even bring in, if you want to do stuff with Shadow Fae, that like... the Shadow Fae are messing with Callaghan, and that's a big clue to any of your savvy PCs. And it could even be a weird, like, the Shadow Fae are helping them.
Oh man, you could totally with the gremlins / the knockers. If you're doing the dreaming, like they're the knockers basically. And so yeah, the gremlins and the Tolly knocks are like super getting into all of Callaghan's
business.
Yeah, because they're trying to stop him.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Plus Gremlins. What more could you want?
You can actually have them be Gremlins.
Gremlins from Gremlins. So, this fundamental concept, Callaghan as a villain, could be the big bad for so many potential schemes, so many potential plans. This is, like you mentioned, this sort of an Azalin level threat to the whole existence of Ravenloft. And that's awesome for your PCs.
Yes.
That's awesome for your game.
Yes.
So,
hang on, we can't do the next session yet. I have to smoke a cigarette first.
So, the last thing we like to do is talk about the strength and the challenges of running this domain. I feel like you can see how we're going to come down here. Strength is great. It is, first off, a very unique setting. There's nothing in Ravenloft that is a superhero setting.
Yeah. And other than the Mordia, there's not really anything that's sci-fi either.
But we have managed, I think, if I may praise us a little bit, to create a kind of horror superhero setting. And as we mentioned, this really fits D&D because, and Ravenloft even, because superhero settings are these plot generators. Yeah. They are just infinite story, infinite plot generators. And the fact that we have this core theme, this kind of the horror heart of it, that's the cycle of vengeance, but that gives you a lot of potential as well. You guys, Batman the Animated Series, bingo, has told you there are so many ways to do vengeance stories. Stories with villains seeking revenge.
Yeah.
Like 2/3 of the characters in that show, the bad guys in that show, start out and go after revenge. The villains opening portals, the superhero setting, the Magitech gives you so many different flavors you could do. You can do your body horror arc. You can do your cosmic horror arc on Akuma Island. You can do your gothic arc where you're really digging into Callaghan's psychology. You can do your folk horror arc. Hit us up in the socials if you figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
You could do anything
your slasher where somebody gets turned into some kind of horrible slavering wolf monster.
Yeah, kind of a Kraven the Hunter deal. And the great thing is, because so much, once again, Batman the Animated Series, so much of superhero stories are driven by the villains.
Yes.
And the villain is what makes the story and what makes it unique and what brings unique challenges for the heroes. And this is another area where it perfectly overlaps with Dungeons & Dragons.
Especially with Ravenloft.
Because in D&D, ever since the first edition advanced. The monster manual is the storybook. The monster manual is, this is the book that you can look to for new stories.
Yeah.
And every new monster manual is a new book of plot hooks. What is the kind of story this monster gives me? Because ultimately that is the point of a monster manual, is to give you stories.
Yeah.
And that's perfect. You can flip through the monster manual, find some appropriately CR'd things, give them a little superhero sci-fi, lip gloss, and that's your session.
Yeah.
And then they want to, rob a jewelry store. And that's your session. Or the big bad creates them as minions to go distract you while the big bad steals a experimental prototype weapon thing. And so, as weird as it seems, a darker, horror-themed Big Hero 6 setting really dovetails a lot of the strengths and ideas of D&D.
Yeah.
But what about the challenges? Because they all have some.
Well, the challenges pretty much all tie into that idea of slapping sci-fi superhero lip gloss on it. Because the thing is, this works really well on its own as this, sci-fi superhero horror setting. But as soon as you start bringing the wider D&D and Ravenloft world into it, then it starts kind of being peanut butter and pickles. Two great tastes that maybe don't go so great together.
It would be weird to do Curse of Strahd and then come here.
Yeah. So, jumping off Curse of Strahd, with vampires, a lot of your classic horror monsters are going to feel out of place here, and you can do, sci-fi spins on them, but then you end up with Morbius. You can only do so many...
time.
Yeah. You can only do so many sci-fi spins before it starts feeling really weird and gimmicky.
Although, sidebar, Marvel Comics did a lot in the early 70s. You had Morbius, you had Werewolf by Night, they had this whole weird stretch where they were doing sci-fi versions of classic monsters.
I mean, Werewolf works great, because you got the body horror transformation thing. So all of that stuff is pretty much going to have to be just vampires, werewolves, zombies, all of it's just going to be the sci-fi version, and eventually that's going to start feeling kind of weird and gimmicky. Also again, with that sci-fi flavor being so strong that it overpowers everything else, if you're running an entire campaign set here, you'll be fine. But if your PCs are coming in from another domain and they're clanking into San Francisco to bring plate mail, that's going to be kind of weird. And we've been doing this whole thing talking about how you can be yes, you're a wizard, but your foci are all tech. Yes, you're a bard, but it's because you've got your super techno loot, all that stuff. But again, coming in here from Tempest, that's gonna feel very strange.
And one weirdo knight can work. There are a couple examples of that in superhero comics, but a whole team of weirdo medieval people.
Yeah.
Let's say a typical Curse of Strahd party beating Strahd and then going to San Francisco is gonna be weird.
And if you want to do it for a one-shot and have it be a fish out of water thing, that could be really fun. But, again, it's kind of that in-between setting of it's not the main thing that you're doing, in which case it's fine and they're making characters from there and everything's great, or it's a one-shot where they're fish out of water. Anything in between that is going to be a little weird. And again, along a similar note, it doesn't really play well with the other domains and settings. We were talking about possibly having Callaghan be bumping heads with Aslan. And, what does that look like? What does Callaghan know about liches? That.
Yeah.
Yeah, that raises a lot of questions. Then the last thing that doesn't have to do with a sci-fi flavor, dark superhero horror is a really cool subgenre. And it's a subgenre that does not get enough play. But that means that the main exemplar that we keep coming back to in this episode and hating ourselves for it is the 90s, which were a terrible time, and we don't want to go back there. There were a lot of really good things about the 90s, and there are a lot of things I miss a lot about the 90s. Comic books are not one of those things. 90s comic books were grimdark and terrible, and they sucked, and you don't want to play in them.
A grimdark superhero setting is a great setting for horror, but it gets stupid so easy.
It does. It
gets stupid so easy. It gets ridiculous
Once again, refrigerators.
For our younger listeners, the Injustice video game series and the storyline there could be a good touchstone for the kind of thing we're talking about. The sort of tone of those stories is the, or as it was really called, Kingdom Come, is the tone that we are going for. So that might be a really good touchstone for you, for your players. If, like, you're not so familiar with some of those comics touchstones we've been mentioning, which are very dated, then you might be able to sort of pitch it as the Injustice video game series.
Yeah, I like that.
So, before we rejoin our narrator and find out what Cycle of Vengeance domain she's going to next.
This is combining so many things from the past couple episodes. We've got Cycle of Vengeance, we've got gods, we've got all kinds of things.
Yes.
And remember, when you hear this and say, but that's not Disney, remember, this is what we do in April.
Look at the calendar.
Yes. April is our non-Disney month. In the spirit of misrule.
Yes, of the overturning of boundaries and rules.
Our episode that drops on the 13th is not a joke. It's going to be a real episode, but in the spirit of misrule, it's not a Disney episode. We did Last Unicorn last year. We're going to do something else this year.
Also, it's our podcast and we do whatever we want.
Exactly. So. This lets us do it within the rules because we're not chaotically aligned. Tom is lawful. I am neutral. Together we fight crime.
We sure do. So, before we go to a non-Disney-esque-ish affiliated Cycle of Vengeance domain next month, where can they contact us and tell us about all the cool, dark, gritty superhero stories they came up with? And
tell us if you want me to tell you about why Eleni, Haslick's apprentice, could very easily be Ravenloft's Harley Quinn.
What a weird set of words. But if they appeal to you, hit us up.
They appeal to me, listeners.
Yes, I know.
They appeal to me. Well, you can email us at wonderfulworldofdarklords@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or Tumblr at Wonderful World of Darklords. And as I mentioned in our Hadestown episode, I have just fixed our Patreon. I figured out what was going on there. So on Patreon, we are now Wonderful World of Darklords. So there are no numbers. We're just Wonderful World of Darklords. And if
Take that, Wonderful World of Darklords 650.
If you go there and you become a patron, you can join our Discord, which is full of really amazing, cool people. And just, you want to be in our Discord, guys. The people in our Discord are so cool.
A couple of days, they'll have a folk horror superhero.
They will. Guarantee it. We had this whole thing recently where it was like our listeners in our Discord were like, "Wow, we feel so good that you guys think we're cool," and we were like, "No, we're the ones who think that who feel so good that you think we're cool. Like, you guys are amazing. How do you think we're cool?"
So, speaking of our Discord, and one of the things that we have done with that Discord and our Patreon, one of the things we've done with that Discord is a listener's choice poll.
Yes.
That we have a lot of times people on Discord pitch us domains. They want us to adapt stuff, which is very flattering. Thank you, by the way.
Yes.
So we put together, they nominated stuff. And it's still ongoing as of recording.
Yeah, these are non-Disney things because basically if it's a Disney thing and we think we can do it, we're already planning. We're already
planning to do it.
But this is
we're gonna get to Atlantis,
stuff.
Okay?
Yeah,
it's on the schedule.
Atlantis is probably our single most requested domain. We're planning to get to it. We're just not there yet.
But this is non-Disney things. The Discord people proposed them. We're going to take the proposals that got the most vote on the Discord, and we're going to make a public poll on the Patreon. So this is public. Anyone, don't need to be on the Discord to vote.
Don't need to be on the Patreon to vote. Anybody can vote.
Yes, it's live now. It's going to close at the end of March. So you have about 2 weeks to go to look at the options, to vote for the one you like the most, and the one that gets the most vote, we will make an episode of. It's going to take a while because it might be like a whole show we need to watch.
Yeah.
Or a book we need to read.
Some of these are shows, yeah.
Or a video game we need to watch an actual play of. Right now, probably around fall, we would be looking to drop the episode.
Yeah.
Maybe later, but we would make it. Like, it's happening. Whatever wins the poll at the end of March is happening.
We're tentatively thinking September. You know, it might be earlier, might be later, but tentatively we're looking at September for our listener's choice. And that's going to be in addition to our regular September episode. It's not going to just be our September episode. It'll be a bonus episode.
And speaking of our Patreon and bonus episodes, we are hard at work at our first Patreon exclusive next episode of our Book Club of Dread series, and this is Fire and Fate by Serena Valentino.
Woohoo! And yeah, remember, this is Patreon exclusive. The first two were for everyone. This one is patrons only. And also, if you want us to bleep out the swears, please go on Patreon and let me know, because right now, it is universally acknowledged that everyone wants swear words in it. So if you listen to this at work, and you're like, oh, please bleep out the swears, go let me know, because otherwise I'm not going to bother.
Yeah. This is from the Disney Villains series, which is a series of middle grade books about Disney villains, as the title suggests. This is the one about Hades, which I read as part of our research for our Hercules episode. And our cocktail is called the Ambrosia Cocktail, with the theme of the Greek gods.
Exactly. So for our cocktail, for the Ambrosia Cocktail, there is a liqueur called Ambrosia, but once again, you can't really mocktail a liqueur. That doesn't work. So the recipe we have for the Ambrosia Cocktail is based on the, Jell-O fruit salad from the South, the Ambrosia, rather than, the Greek gods Ambrosia.
Nobody knows what that was.
Yeah, we can still
maybe
use
they were having Jell-O fruit salad up in Mount Olympus for immortality.
So the recipe as written is 2 parts coconut rum to 1 part orange juice to 1 part pineapple juice. We, to simplify it, just did 1 part coconut rum, 1 part orange juice, 1 part pineapple juice.
That's how we party. If you want to do the mocktail version, then you can use coconut water. And that's going to have that, give you that good coconut flavor. Mm-hmm. So if you like our drink recommendations and you like that we got a really good, pretty horrific domain out of Flippity Big Hero 6, then we have on DM's Guild a couple of horror movies I have adapted into 5e adventures. If you just go to More by this author on the free write-up for this domain, there will of course be the free write-up for San Francisco Kyoto. Or just look for Tom Kohler. You'll be able to find them. Also, if you like our consideration for the tender feelings of young people that love Big Hero 6, then we have a couple of resources for running sort of more horror, spooky themed games, running Curse of Strahd for younger players. And speaking of spooky things for young people, I have a book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. It's exactly what it sounds like. You can also go to my website, www.rachelkohler.com, if you want to look for some of my short stories for adults. A lot of them are on online magazines. They're available for free there. And I don't think I have any about superheroes. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. But you can go there and, find links to my various short stories there and read them for free. Until next time, thank you for listening. And happy gaming.
Parting thoughts. I felt a pang of regret upon leaving San Francisco, imagining what its artificers could have done if they were not so consumed with vengeance. Project Silent Sparrow, the mechanical insects, even such comparatively minor wonders as boots of speed. I could scarcely wrap my mind around the ways that these could improve the lives of those around them. As I entered the mists, holding a ball of iron as a talisman, I wished fervently that someday the people of San Francisco would see with eyes unclouded by hate. Regards, D.
My servant laments upon the petty Borkin-style bickering she is so fond of referencing that plagues the citizens of San Francisco. You have a soft heart and fail to recognize the rarity in encountering denizens of the mist that use their gifts for altruistic purposes. Indeed, heroes may be commonplace in lands such as Olympus, but their motivations are guided by nothing more than selfish desire. San Francisco is no different, despite the quaint inventions of the populace's artificers. It seems my servant believes that thoroughly research the situation at hand equates to sauntering into an open portal before studying it from without. Have I not taught you that magic is to be respected? Do not blame your recklessness on my words. Perhaps instead of parodying them, you would do better to understand the intent behind them. As for Callaghan, the loss of a child can drive one to resort to many actions that others may find unsavory. Is a desperate parent in the wrong to sacrifice hundreds or even thousands of individuals to return him or her to their side? What is the worth of countless, unknown souls when weighed against the life of a beloved child? It is not something I would expect a nulliparous woman to understand, nor answer. Though Callaghan's daughter still lives, his efforts to return her to his side will fail. She is nothing more than a carrot dangled before a starving beast. Spell work that allows one to shift to another plane of existence, or leave these realms entirely, is cut off from the magical energies, what some call the weave, of these lands. To have even a minor chance of success would require a spell with enormous amount of power behind it. Not something I suspect a masked thief to be capable of.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
You want to go to Barovia, you want to fight a Tatiana reincarnation. No. You want to go to Barovia, you want to save a Tatiana from Straw. She had it too good for too long.
Look, this is how we end this once and for all.
Yes.